Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, is this
This
Jin?
is Suiho, yes. Suiho
Ah,
Chain.
Suiho. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Sorry for the late.
No problem at all. You managed to find the email, okay then?
Yeah, that's right.
Great stuff. Okay, all good. Just first thing to check, when you click the up arrow to the right of your microphone in Zoom,
Please repeat.
so you see your microphone on the bottom left of Zoom,
Bottom left audio,
the microphone,
right?
the audio button. To the right, you've got an up arrow. If you click the arrow to the right, which opens the settings.
Yes.
If you go to audio settings at the bottom.
I'm on audio setting.
Yeah, and then halfway down the screen, do you see the word microphone?
Microphone, yes.
Yeah. Keep going down. Is there a checkbox that says automatically adjust microphone volume? It's like a box that you tick that says automatically adjust microphone volume. It should be just below your... Is that ticked?
Right. Got it.
Is it ticked?
Yeah. Automatically. And do I check on advanced?
Yes. No, it's just that box that says automatically adjust microphone volume. Has it got a tick in it?
Yes, it has a circle.
A circle. A circle.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, we can close that window then.
I close the window.
Great.
Yeah.
Can you move mic a bit closer, maybe? Is this a headset microphone?
Yes, it is. Can you hear me now?
That's much better. Perfect now.
Okay.
Perfect now.
Right.
Okay. Sorry, I haven't selected you as an interpreter yet, have I?
Yes. Chinese.
Here we go. I'm just trying to find you in the list. So what's your name currently in Zoom?
Okay. The family surname is Chin, Chin.
Yes, I'm just looking for that in the participants list.
Yes, it's Chin. That's the family name, last name.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I see you. Right. So do you mind if I rename you as... Do you mind? Is that okay? So we're the same as the other interpreters, unless you'd like to. We like to have INT at the beginning.
INT, yes.
And then your languages. So if you look at Chang, let's see how Chang's labelled himself.
Where do I look for it?
I can do this if you like, if it's easier.
Okay.
Sure, I can do it here, yeah. So Chang has put INT ZH Chang, so I will put INT ZH Chin, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Bear with me. Yeah, there we go. Perfect, now I can assign you and you'll see your language channels very shortly.
Good.
English and Chinese, and you should have the controls now. So we'll start on English, please. Suiho. So listening on English for Suiho. We're on Chinese at the moment. Can you just switch to English? We'll start English first. Let me go to Chinese if you're on Chinese. Can you hear me? Yes. So you should have the language selectors in front of you now, the two buttons. Yes. So you've got Chinese on the right, and when it's lit with a lighter colour, that means it's selected. So now can you click on English, and then English should become the lighter colour, and we'll check the English channel. Yes. Yes, that's going into English.
Hi, Ben Consuelo here. Do you mind continuing by chat for the rest of the onboarding? Thank you.
marcher piguet. Oi, oi, oi. Marcher piguet. Oi, oi, oi.
Problem in all the finish. Make you try to enjoy you. Wahala in all the finish. Make you try to enjoy you. Say kata kata uru uru not the finish. Make you try to enjoy you. Problem in all the finish. So make you try to enjoy you. Make you dance like Luala. Yeah, Luala. Make you dance like Luala. Yeah, Luala. Make you dance like Luala.
Person keep person. But all I see finish. That person, that person. Problem, you know they last forever. Make you try to enjoy. I walk up from Pelham Mujet to Apollo Meta just to find a mentor. Now who talk, they hear what follow. Now who watch them get caught.
For fun, say my person. Don't give a person, belly on good. How will they consign me? How will they consign me? I don't know. Problem in all the finish you. It's your girl. Sapana, you be the best friend. No, sure you don't know.
Problem in all the finish. Make you try to enjoy you. Wahala in all the finish. Make you try to enjoy you. Say kata kata uru uru not the finish. Make you try to enjoy you. Problem is not the finish. So make you try to enjoy you. Make you dance like Luala. Yeah, Luala. Make you dance like Luala. Yeah, Luala. Yeah, Luala.
Afrika yeuna amadul khabiya
Good morning, my neighbor. How are you doing? Are you feeling okay? Good morning, my neighbor. How are you doing? Are you feeling okay? Good morning, my neighbor. How are you doing? Are you feeling okay? Good morning, my neighbor. How are you doing?
mochi, também bocata poder ser dele. Já me voa pra mim, na alegria na doçura. Já mostrou tudo esse amor, pez bandeira, terra de sabura. E já te li tem mais nada, bota li tem mais nada, tu gente li tem mais nada. Agora já me ouvi esse som desse violão, hoje é igual, bota me ouvi esse som desse violão. Senta no cabo de, senta no cabo de, senta no cabo de, no cabo de, senta no cabo de, senta no cabo de.
See, ladies and gentlemen, yeah, she's about my height. So is that right? Should we? Yeah, I see the whole text. Yeah, go ahead and let's size looks good. No, I think that's good. No. It's a real pleasure to be here today. Now we just got to test this. To make sure. Okay. Before I begin, I'd like to flag that today marks singles. A topic that is of great importance to IOM. This is good speed, I think.
That's good, that's a good.
Time when we put survivors at the heart of our.
Foi assim que nos conhecemos. Eu senti, logo deu pra ver. Não sei se é amor na poesia mais bem escrita. Eu vou me perder na melodia mais bonita. O que tu és pra mim, és a luz que me ilumina. Já me prendi a ti, meu novo beco sem saída. Sem saída. Meu novo beco sem saída. Sem saída. Ela diz que é tão bom viver do meu lado. E ela quis ficar aqui comigo pra sempre. Então fazer tudo pra bom, tudo só pra te amar, minha amor. Minha rainha dia e noite, me está preso na boa. Não sei se é amor na poesia mais bem escrita. Eu vou me perder na melodia mais bonita. O que tu és pra mim, és a luz que me ilumina. Já me prendi a ti, meu novo beco sem saída. Sem saída. Meu novo beco sem saída. Sem saída. Amor, o teu toque me alivia, alivia. Preso no teu love, baby, baby. Amor, o teu toque me alivia, alivia. Preso no teu love, baby, baby. Sem saída. Meu novo beco sem saída. Sem saída. Girl, I pray that the universe gives you way more than you deserve. And when the tears fall like shooting stars, remember who you are. Just look up to the sky, you'll see. But I pray that the universe gives you way more than you deserve. When the tears fall like shooting stars, remember who you are. Just
look up to the sky, you'll see I'm coming back for you. Coming back for you. Coming back for you. Ooh, you were never alone. Girl, I'ma see you someday. I know that I'ma see you someday. And I go take you someplace. I know that I'ma take you someplace. I no go ever leave you out. I no go give you no wahala. Always be there for you. Coming back for you. Coming back for you. Coming back for you. Ooh, you were never alone. Oh, I'm coming back for you. Life without the universe.
Good morning. Can I invite all delegates to please take your seats? Please come sit down so we can begin our program. May I invite all delegates to please take their seats? Good morning, delegates. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, friends. Can I ask you all to please take your seats? And we're about to start. I'd like to thank most sincerely our special musical guest. Merci beaucoup, DJ Karami. Merci beaucoup. let me say a little bit about what you've just heard and the person who has been offering this beautiful music to us as we get started today. DJ, beatmaker, singer-songwriter Karami is a Paris-based Swiss artist of Haitian and Hungarian origin. Her DJ sets navigate between zouk, compa, hip-hop, R&B, house, Afrobeats, and more. The music she composes is equally influenced by all of these styles. Karami is regularly invited to perform live and in DJ sets all over the world: Guadeloupe, Paris, Geneva, Zurich, Brussels, Berlin, and we are so grateful to have her here with us today. She conceives of music as an expression, as a crucial dimension of feminist and anti-racist activism. She regularly collaborates with militant collectives. Equally passionate about passing on her knowledge, she regularly runs introductory courses in Jing and/or in beat making. Karami also thrives on collaborative, multidisciplinary projects, composing for theater, dance, and film, and puts music at the heart of her life. I'd like to invite you all to join me in thanking DJ Karami for her beautiful music to set us up today. Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished delegates. I'm Michelle Klein-Solomon, formerly of IOM, very recently formerly of IOM. It's my great pleasure to welcome you all here today to this second International Dialogue on Migration of the year. The first one took place in New York in May, and this one is focused specifically on the theme of finding balance in regular migration pathways solutions, driving sustainable development and green transitions. And without further ado, I would like to invite Director General Amy Pope to offer the keynote address. You have the floor, Madam Director General.
Good morning, everybody. All right, first of all, let me set the stage. This is not the council. The council's tomorrow, right? So that's important because this day is a totally different vibe. This is a day where we invite people from civil society, we want young people, we want our members and representatives of our partner agencies to come together and have a little bit of fun. It's not meant to be all of you sitting around, sort of listening studiously, raising your hand and just sort of engaging mechanically. Today is a day where we celebrate the wonders, the beauties, the promise of migration. So you'll notice we did something a little bit anti-Geneva, and we started our day with a DJ. We're incorporating music, we're incorporating art, and at some point, I promise you, you all are gonna get up and dance. So make sure you're ready. If you wanna do a little practicing of dance moves in the background, you can do that too. But before I begin, I just wanna say thank you for coming, and I wanna acknowledge we're wearing orange. Today is an important day. This is the day that begins the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, and this is a topic that is of so much importance to all of us here at IOM. And to me personally, it's not just these 16 days, it's every day. It's a time when we shine a spotlight on the concerted efforts that we are making together collectively to fight gender-based violence and to put the survivors of gender-based violence at the heart of our work. So thank you to those of you who are wearing orange. Thanks to those of you who are here to acknowledge, to celebrate, to stand in solidarity with the people who have survived gender-based violence and to make sure that it is not a phenomenon that continues. Now, back to the issue of the day. Now, while many of us in this room have different perspectives on the issue of pathways, I know that all of us want to see migration managed better globally. And we all know that we have to work together to achieve the goal. We know, because the evidence is there, that migration and migrants overwhelmingly are driving economic resilience, growth and prosperity. And there are hard facts that underpin so much of the work that we're doing here at IOM. So our shared goal collectively is to harness these enormous benefits while we're addressing what are, and we have to admit, real challenges, particularly when it comes to irregular migration. In other words, the job in front of all of us today is how to fix a broken global migration system that is no longer making sense for the modern world. Our goal is to make sure that migration is safe, to make sure it's orderly, to make sure it's humane, but also to make sure that it's smart and to make sure that it's strategic. Since our last dialogue, which we held in New York last May, we had lots of reminders of how the current system isn't working. And I beg you, I implore you, let's not spend too much time admiring the problem. Instead, the opportunity that we have all here today is to create a new model. We know the problem. The drivers of displacement are becoming increasingly more complex. And we heard it loud and clear at COP29 just these last couple of weeks. The numbers of people who are being displaced globally as a result of climate change are high, and they're going to continue to grow. And the projected numbers, in the absence of concerted, strategic, urgent action, will be unimaginable. And we know that it's the people who are suffering, the migrants themselves. Last year, more than 8,500 people that we know died on the migration route. It was the deadliest year on record. And I want you just, if you can, to take a moment to see the exhibit that our colleagues have placed here today. It's an exhibit of roses, and I think you'll see all our IOM staff are wearing roses. The roses mark the lives that have been lost of people who have sought a better life. Now, we know migrant deaths in the English Channel reach unprecedented numbers by September of this year. We know that the reason people are dying is that they're not finding access to regular ways of migrating. And we know that when faced with what seem to be impossible choices, people often choose choices that leave them far worse off. But that's the problem. Our goal here is to focus on solutions. And one of the solutions we know is that legal migration, migration through safe and regular pathways, is bringing clear economic gains. Despite what you see in the elections, despite the rhetoric that you're hearing, 30 of the largest economies in the world faced labor shortages this last year, an estimated $1.3 trillion in lost opportunities. So the solution has to be somewhere here. Has to be in how we look at the migration and asylum systems and how they intersect with displacement pressures, humanitarian concerns, and the labor market needs. Ironically, migration, the terrible negative rhetoric, is playing out against a backdrop where migration is essential for many states. So to effectively manage what's happening, to create better outcomes for more people on the move, to effectively respond to the irregular migration pressures and curb the abuses of the current system, we're asking all of you, governments, civil society, young people, officials, other partner agencies, to come together, to commit to a comprehensive and strategic approach where we combine development, where we combine support to hosting countries and available pathways for vulnerable people to migrate safely. Now, we also need to strengthen international cooperation and partnerships, not just between and within states, but with the private sector, with young people, with the diaspora, and so many more. That's why you're here. This is where we create innovative solutions. This is where we start small, but we think big, and we scale fast. and our goal is to have a sustained impact and contribute to meaningful change. Now, you all know that facilitating regular pathways is a key part of what we're doing here at IOM, and our goal is to make sure that migration's full potential is harnessed. Our goal is to make sure that we are enabling regular pathways in ways that improve the system. We here at IOM are working with so many of you, with states, with regional bodies, with economic communities, in development, in revision and rights-based implementation of laws and policies that are so that we can have stronger migration governance. And last year, we provided support to over 80 countries. This does mean improving the way we manage our borders, and we've done that too. It does mean ensuring that we are countering irregular smuggling and the human traffickers and human smugglers who are profiting off the backs of some of the most vulnerable people. And yes, in many cases, it also means that people will need to go home. But when they do go home, we want to make sure they do so safely and with dignity. We want to make sure that once they're home, they're reintegrated back into their communities. So as we're here together, we're going to try to zoom out. We're going to look at the bigger picture. We're going to look at creating a workable model of migration, one that's comprehensive, where regular pathways form a key component. And there are 4 things that I want us to keep in mind. Number 1, let's recognize the link between development and migration. We know that poor development outcomes can fuel irregular migration, but we also know migration fuels development. For those who are fleeing persecution or war, political solutions are essential. But for the millions who are fleeing poverty or weak governance or even violence in their communities, other solutions are needed. We need to be investing in education, infrastructure, financial inclusion, agriculture, and skills training in home countries. These are critical to bringing stability for people at home. But the key piece here, remittances are driving and boosting developing economies. So how do we leverage migration as a tool for development? I'm so pleased to see my good friend, the minister from Cabo Verde, who has just come into this audience. And the reason I'm calling him out is because Cabo Verde has developed an investment guide for their diaspora to invest in their infrastructure back home. This is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about leveraging migration as a tool for development. So please ask him about it later. It's a really good tool. Second, we need recalibrated migration policies. We need migration policies that actually meet growing labor demands. Resilient economies depend on it. We know irregular migrants are finding jobs in the informal markets of their destination countries all over the world. And we should not see that as a problem per se. We should recognize it as an imbalance that needs correcting. Whether it's in lower skilled sectors like agriculture or construction, or in higher skilled sectors like healthcare or engineering. Migration policies must be pragmatic, labor responsive, ethical, and enable a better connection between people and opportunities. Now, I'm very pleased that we have a strong partnership with our good friends at ILO, because they are the experts on how we make sure migration policies enable better labor mobility for more people. But I'm also pleased that so many of you in this room have very good examples of where you're demonstrating how to use migration as a way to meet demographic and labor needs. Third, we need to combine development, labor shortage analysis, and migration. That means we're putting it all together. By directing development funds towards skills training for would-be migrants, particularly those who are vulnerable, we can benefit everyone, the migrants themselves, the communities they're coming from, and the communities they're going to. So that means we analyze labor market gaps, we prioritize skills training in the countries of origin, Places like in Bangladesh, for example, already there are technical schools where would-be migrants are receiving training in things like manufacturing or mechanical repair. Or in Germany, where an initiative to train and recruit nurses internationally has potential benefits both in the local economy as well as to meet the German labor market needs. It's also critically important that we go beyond training. We actually look to how we can make sure people can get those job opportunities. Now, the wonderful thing about our globalized economy is that if you are a trained doctor or engineer, no matter in the world, you can use LinkedIn as a tool to connect you with a job opportunity. But if you're a migrant from a poor community who does not have access to those resources, you may never hear about the job opportunities that exist. So our goal is to create the links between jobs and people so that we go beyond just training. We actually connect the dots. Now, I want to call out one promising example. It's the labor mobility agreement that was reached last year between Tuvalu and Australia. Now, that is a place where the two governments came together, recognized the risks faced by the communities in Tuvalu, which is an atoll nation in the Pacific Islands, faced by a very significant risk of disappearing under the sea. And Australia has partnered with Tuvalu to invest in their infrastructure, but also to create labor pathways so that people can live and work and create networks abroad. Now, it's equally important that the knowledge and the skills that migrants are learning are invested back into their home communities. So we encourage you, as you're thinking about options, to figure out how we use development tools that exist to enable that information and training to go back into communities. And this is where diaspora can really play an important role. Whether they're investing in communities, enhancing skills, enabling the training or the services back home. Now, the last thing is that we must invest in migrant protection. And we must invest in integration of migrants into their host communities. This means that we need to make sure that migrants have the awareness of the rights that should be available to them and the cultures that they're going into. It means ensuring that we have civil society who's empowered, that we have labor unions that are engaged, that we have the official channels that are focused on ensuring regular oversight and enforcement of labor laws. The worst thing that could come out of our efforts here is to see greater exploitation and abuse of vulnerable people. So figuring out how we empower all of you to be part of the solution so that migration creates better outcomes rather than suffering is key. There's also opportunity for migration to contribute in very meaningful and tangible ways to the just transition and green economies. We know already, for example, that we will not meet the Paris green climate goals without migration. Simply put, because there are not enough people to do the work that is necessary to transition to these new technologies. This is a place where we should be thinking strategically. How do we use migration as a tool to accomplish something that is so valuable to the world and to the young people who will be joining us today? So I hope all of you are coming to this day, and we're packing a lot into this day, with ideas, with focus, with engagement, so that we can truly realize the promise of migration. I'm not talking about small tweaks to the system. I'm talking about a complete rethink of what we now do. We now spend billions of dollars on border enforcement. What if we just invest some bit of that money in a targeted approach that links migration trends and labor market needs with development investments in vulnerable communities? Think about it. Safe and regular migration pathways are part of this comprehensive approach. It's part of making this whole system work. And I'm thrilled that we're going to have panel discussions today to explore how we do it, to explore how we bolster sustainable development, to explore how we catalyze the green transition, and to explore how we combat the disinformation that, frankly, is so damaging to the very economies that are embracing it today. And I urge you, work on the practical solutions. We have lots of theories about what could work, but let's focus on how we create a system, one that empowers people to connect with opportunities, to enable them to invest resources into communities around the world. This is truly sustainable development. This is truly leveraging migration. This is a way to make migration work for all. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Madam Director General. What an excellent speech and a way to start our day. And thank you very much for joining me on the podium. I'm going to invite the speakers and the moderator for the next panel to please join me on the podium. Colleagues, you'll have an opportunity to interact with the Director General after we've heard some introductory remarks from the panelists who are joining. This first panel is a setting the scene panel and very much builds on what the Director General just said. It's focused on regular migration pathways today, both opportunities and challenges, and really designed to get at the crux of those practical solutions that can exist. While the panelists are joining me, let me just offer you some general information. Today, simultaneous interpretation. You can go ahead, Patricia. It's fine, please go ahead. Please go ahead. You need me to move, okay. I'll move in a minute, thank you. So today we have simultaneous interpretation in all 6 official languages of the United Nations: Arabic, Chinese, English, French, Russian, and Spanish. And to allow for accurate interpretation, may I ask that delegates please speak at a measured pace so that the interpreters can keep up with what you're saying. And as the Director General said, we want this to be an active and interactive dialogue, very much going back and forth. We'll have presentations from the podium, but in many ways the most important part is the interaction with all of you, whether it's member states, civil society, migrants organizations, private sector, our partners in the UN system. All of you have equal voice here, so don't be shy in offering up your questions, your suggestions, your comments on what's been said. And in order to ensure that everybody has an equal opportunity to speak, I'm going to ask you to be super precise. 2 minutes each from the floor so that we get to hear from as many people as possible. Let me now announce the moderator for this session, and I'll switch places with him in just as soon as I do. It's my pleasure to welcome Muhammad Ali Abu Najela. He's the Deputy Director of the Department of Media and Communications at IOM. Muhammad Ali is the acting director, actually, of the department now, spearheading essential communications operations and strategy. Previously, he served in IOM's MENA region, Middle East and North Africa regional office as the spokesperson in Cairo from 2021 to the end of 2023. His career is rich. It includes senior media and communications roles at prestigious organizations such as Amnesty International, Oxfam International, BBC World Service, and Islamic Relief. Muhammad Ali holds a PhD and a Master of Science in Media and International Political Communications, and has an extensive portfolio of academic publications. I'm going to turn over to him and turn over also my seat to him. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much for the introduction. I am Muhammad Ali. I'm not the boxer. I'm the other one, you know. So I will be doing my best to moderate this very important session, zooming into the very important topic of regular pathways, one of the three main strategic pillars for IOM, 2024 to 2028, and to zoom in and to discuss the opportunities about regular pathways as well as the challenges. Regular pathways for migration are integral to delivering on the promise of migration to address global challenges. Where and how people migrate, with what outcomes, depend largely on the options available to them. But evidence highlights that currently the available options are insufficient for the complex, shifting context of today and tomorrow. There is a need to strengthen regular migration pathways to mitigate the risks of deepening divides and inequalities globally. Change and innovation are urgently required to capitalize on the opportunities for pathways of migration. And as I said, that IOM has made regular migration pathways one of its three key pillars in its 2024-2028 strategic plan. And we will zoom in to a bit more into this and discuss with our distinguished panelists and with their expertise to understand more about this. My first guest will be our Director General, the Director General of IOM, Amy Pope, who has been the Director General of the organization since October 1st, 2023, bringing a wealth of experience in addressing complex migration issues and passion for changing the global narrative about people on the move. She is, of course, the first woman to hold this position in IOM's 73-year history. In early part of her 5-year term, Ms. Pope put the organization on a new strategic path, designed to ensure that IOM can respond to an increasing complex migration landscape. Director General, we are seeing global migration trends point to more migration and greater needs for it in the future, including to manage labor market imbalances, shifting demographic and technological change. We are also witnessing an unprecedented rise in displacement driven by intersecting crises and ongoing challenges with irregular migration. The world is clearly crying out for more coordinated approach. You have been able to see this year firsthand while you were traveling to different countries, how these trends are manifesting on the ground in so many different countries around the world. So I ask you, what are some of your key takeaways from 2024 on these aspects? Over to you, Director General.
Thank you so much, Muhammad Ali. First of all, I just have to take a moment to be excited about the panel that I'm sitting amongst. I mean, this is really incredible. First of all, I have to have a fangirl moment, which I hope you'll indulge me, because we're sitting here with Professor Ian Golden from Oxford, whose very book is already sitting on my nightstand. Would you hold it up? If you have not read this book, I highly recommend it. I know he's going to talk about it soon, but I'm really, really thrilled to have you here. And of course, Mr. Gabriel Fall, who is really driving the conversation about how we do what we just said, connecting the dots between people and opportunities in a way that is ethical, in a way that empowers communities and leads to better sustainable outcomes. So, and of course, our dear, dear friend and longtime IOMer who has left us to go now study at Harvard and to help us do our work better. So it's super exciting. I hope you all realize how great it is to have this community here today. So let me just go to the question. I mean, I have, with my leadership team, who are here today, DDG Daniels, who leads our operations, DDG Lee, who leads our management team, Catalina Devandas, who leads our partnerships, advocacy, and communications, and of course our chief of staff, who is not with us because he has the flu today. But between us, we have visited 65 countries this year. Now, I tell you that not because I want you to admire the frequent flyer miles that we seem to be accumulating, but because it's really at the heart of what we're doing. We want to get out, we want to talk to governments, we want to talk to the migrants that we serve. We want to understand how do we bring a new approach to our work, and how do we think about what's happening in terms of the movement of people today around the world. And it's these conversations, and it's the way we see implementation in the field, it's what we hear from our colleagues who are working all over the world in 180 different countries that has led us to come up with this comprehensive plan, right? Where we're looking at how do we support the world's most vulnerable, but also leverage and build on this promise of migration. I was recently in Sudan just a couple weeks ago, and Sudan is probably one of the most complicated places, most challenging places in the world for people who are on the move. We have identified over 11 million people who have been displaced in the country of Sudan. People are being displaced by conflict, sometimes being displaced multiple times. People are being displaced then by climate. I met with some communities who had been relocated only to find themselves then dealing with floods and having to move again. And it's not just in Sudan. We see this all over the world. Communities who are at risk move and then are at risk again. And it begs the question of how we respond as an international organization who is tasked with creating better outcomes for more people. So that's what you see embedded in our strategic plan, right? First of all, our job is to save lives. That's what we're doing in Sudan. We're supporting the 11 million people who are on the move in the country. And with our partners at UNHCR and some of the other agencies, WFP and UNICEF, for example, we're supporting those who are crossing borders into the neighboring countries of Chad and Egypt and South Sudan, Eritrea, in some cases in Ethiopia. So that's what we do. We get them shelter. We help get people access to emergency aid. We do humanitarian assistance. But we also know, because we've seen it play out all over the world, if we stop with our emergency response, if we give somebody a tarp and a hygiene kit and say, great, that should serve you well, you should be fine now. 5 years later, we're going to go back and find people in the same situation. So then we move to, okay, well, how do we move from just providing that Band-Aid, how do we just stop the bleeding, to how do we enable people to make a new pathway for themselves, to make a new life for themselves? That's why we're investing in these driving solutions to displacement. Some of that means how do we enable people to work or find better shelters? How do we enable people to integrate into their local communities? Or how do we, as we did at COP the last couple of weeks, how do we actually anticipate which communities are at risk of displacement and work with them even before they're forced to move? If we can do that, that would be groundbreaking. And embedded in that is a recognition that safe, orderly migration pathways will be part of the solution, because no matter what we do collectively, what governments do, what civil society does, what international organizations do, there will be some number of people who simply have to move. So can we think about enabling people to move in safer, more planned and strategic ways? The situation in Tuvalu is just that. We know that communities in Tuvalu will not be able to stay where they are. So how do we enable them to move safely? Now, in some cases, that will be in their own country. In some cases, it will be to neighboring countries. In some cases, it will be further afield. And it's these sort of concentric circles that we're working toward to be able to build better outcomes for more people. Now, the goal here, if we actually succeed in accomplishing these three objectives, saving lives, driving solutions to displacement, and facilitating pathways that are regular and orderly, if we do that right, the end goal is that we should be disincentivizing the reliance on irregular pathways. I've worked on border issues for my whole career. I've worked on migration issues for my whole career. And what I've seen time again is that we spend, frankly, hundreds of billions of dollars on border management and on returns. If we invest just some of that money on stabilizing communities that are facing humanitarian disaster, and then investing in the human potential of the communities who have been displaced, we will get better outcomes. So that's frankly why we're here today, is that the lessons we've learned from the last several decades of working on the issue is that we just need to be thinking bigger and more creatively. We need to bring some of these innovative practices to the work we're doing, and we can't do it alone. It requires all the governments here, it requires all our partners here, it requires civil society, it requires private sector, and it requires our diaspora. So that's what I've learned.
Thank you so much. You've mentioned, if I may do a quick follow-up, you've mentioned the private sector. As there are multiple crises happening, conflict, climate change, and many factors of drivers, I know that you are prioritizing private sectors as one of the solutions because there is that hunger and need from the private sector to labor, with the labor markets and skilled workers. How do you find this intersects with the question of regular pathways?
There are three ways. Number one is the private sector can be an investor in our humanitarian response. We saw following the crisis in Ukraine, the private sector step up in ways that we hadn't actually experienced before at IOM, offering food, offering blankets and other kinds of support for people, in-kind support, money, resources, access to finance, providing shelter for people who are on the move. So investing in our humanitarian response is the first and easiest way. The second, though, is that the private sector, frankly, does a lot of things better than what we do. So the private sector has the ability to manage a supply chain in crisis, sometimes ways that are much, much faster and more responsive than our supply chain. So the private sector as an investor in our responses is absolutely key. And the third, and to me this is the most exciting, particularly in the context of today's conversation, is the private sector as a partner in creating better migration outcomes for more people. When you think about it, it's not governments who create jobs. Governments create some number of jobs, but they're pretty small. It's the private sector that creates jobs. And frankly, it's the private sector that needs the workforce that is predictable, that is sustainable, that is available. And I see tremendous potential for us to leverage what the private sector needs in order to create better migration outcomes for more people. When migration is well managed, the private sector benefits. So let's use that as a tool for the work that we're doing. Let's use that as one piece of building better solutions that work for more people around the world.
Thank you so much, Director General. And now I move to Professor Ian Golden, but let me introduce him properly. Professor Ian Golden is a professor of globalization and development at the University of Oxford. From 2006 to 2016, he was the founding director of the Oxford Martin School and currently leads the Oxford Martin Research Program on Technological and Economic Change, the Future of Work, and the Future of Development. From 2003 to 2006, he was the Vice President of the World Bank, and prior to that, Bank's Director of Development Policy, Chief Executive and Managing Director of the Development Bank of South Africa, and served as an advisor of President Nelson Mandela. Now, Professor, given your vast spectrum of work on a global migration, including your new book on migration, and I hope that you will be talking about it, and I know that I can see it in your desk here. What do you think are some of the key long-term evidence that policymakers around the world really need to know, especially on origin and destination dynamics in economic and demographic context? Over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Director General, Excellencies, distinguished participants. First, let me congratulate the Director General on her tremendous leadership of the IOM, which is doing really fantastic work. I've been following the IOM over many decades, and to see it as part of the UN, to see the quality and the depth and breadth of its work is one of the most positive features of a sometimes dismal international migration environment. So thank you, Director General, for your leadership. I was also inspired by her comments this morning from the podium, where she referred to the need for major changes for the 4 reasons that she cited, which I won't repeat. I too share this passion, this belief that migration is at the heart of development, and my new book, The Shortest History of Migration, simply draws this out. We are all migrants. None of us would be here without migration. No civilization would exist without migration. The species would have died long ago. We would be Neanderthals, Denisovans, or some other species. We would not be Homo sapiens, and we certainly would not have achieved the huge breakthroughs we have, not least in recent years. Until about 110 years ago, there were no passports. There was no border control as we know it today. This is a modern invention. People moved. People moved in huge numbers. A third of Europe moved, a third of Sweden, a third of Italy, half of the Irish left Ireland. The Irish population today of about 5 million is still much smaller than it was in the 1850s. If they had not moved, like my parents, on both sides, my grandparents, I would not be here. They both were refugees, one from Eastern Europe, the other from the Nazis, but none of us would be here. So I believe that migration is not only at the heart of who we are as people, but that it is the core to our future as well. I'm an economist. The economic evidence is loud and clear. Not only in the short term do migrants contribute more than they take out of economies, but in the longer term, they are the source of dynamism and improvement in societies. If you simply look at innovation and patents, which I do, if you look at Nobel Prize winners, if you look at Academy Award winners, if you look at any indicator of small business development, you see that migrants in all societies are overrepresented. Something like 3 times as many people as you would expect are migrants in these sources of dynamism. So in the short term, migrants contribute positively. In the long term, they are even more important. And they will be more so in the future, given the demographic shifts and given the needs of our societies. As economies develop, they change not only in that fertility, the number of children per adult woman declines dramatically, and well over half the countries in the world now are way below replacement level. India's just gone below replacement level, interestingly. I never thought I would see that in my lifetime. But also they change in terms of their needs. As they become wealthier, they need less and less material goods, less and manufactured goods, traded goods, more and more people focus things which cannot be replaced by machines, will not be replaced by artificial intelligence over the next 10, 20 years. Many things will be, but care of elderly people, care of young people, the making of meals, the hospitality services, all of these are the growth parts of our services that will require more and more people. And of course, we will, I think, in 20 years' time at a meeting like this, be saying, how do we attract more people, not how do we keep them out? That will be the conversation of the future. But the disconnect now between the conversations we have and governments around the world and politicians in all our societies have about how do we keep the migrants out. There's also, I believe, a mistaken understanding of what's often called the brain drain from countries. This is exaggerated in most cases. Many countries, not least small island states, do suffer tremendously. But one has to ask, and I've certainly seen this in my own lifetime, what happens with brain circulation. Remittances were referred to by the Director General. This is over $1 trillion a year. For many economies, by far the largest source of income. It's not only that remittances are sent back, but of course we know from the data that the societies that migrants leave, these exceptional people making sacrifices often on behalf of their families, often one sibling, on behalf of the communities they leave, have higher levels of education and health than societies which do not send migrants. In other words, the idea that somehow migrants leaving undermines the human capital of the societies they leave is not borne out by the evidence that migrants groups, migrant communities, often have higher levels of education and health than non-migrants. Of course, at certain levels, particularly for professionals, one has to ask the question about a transfer from the south to the north. The southern countries are investing in their skills, in the education, in the health, in the universities of people that are then absorbed by the northern. And when I add these numbers up, I find that it outweighs aid flows. So remittances are greater than all aid and foreign investment, but the flows of human capital outweigh the aid flows. And so I think we have to, as part of the migration bargain that I would propose, we need to think about how we recompensate the societies that are training people for this training, for this investment in human capital, and ask difficult questions. Is it the individuals who should be repaying for their education? Or is it the governments? When British government recruits nurses from Malawi, should we, the NHS, the National Health Service, be paying for them? Or is it those nurses themselves that get higher income that should be contributing more towards their education? I believe a migration bargain is the way forward, where we accept that we will need more migrants, we accept that they have more rights, that they paid minimum wages, that they have health and safety, that they have pension portability, that they have legal, predictable pathways for coming and going, but they also have responsibilities, and their employers have responsibilities. Those responsibilities include paying tax, being documented, and of course, abiding by the laws of the countries that they go to. I believe such a migration bargain would appease some of the political concerns that we currently see. I think we need much more grown-up conversations about our needs and not simply say, let's get to not having migrants. If any society, not least a society like the US, which is so utterly dependent on migrants, were to expel all its undocumented workers and were to stop new migrants, it would lead to the collapse of the economy. Many sectors, agriculture, construction, health, and others would suffer. It would reduce female labor force participation because the evidence shows us that the ability of migrants to work in the home increase the participation of local people in the labor market. And of course, it would lead to rapid increases in prices and therefore slow the economy down. So very, very counterproductive. My view then is that migrants are a net force for good, but of course there are huge challenges. These need to be confronted up front, and I thank IOM for doing such a great job in hosting this debate. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor. This is quite powerful and impactful. Just like, can I ask you for a quick question? It's not an easy question. I know you've said we are all migrants, and migration is the core to our future. Every country, has migration embedded in its history, and yet we've seen an increased narrative of anti-migration. Are you hopeful that within a whole society approach and a holistic approach is that we can change and change this narrative?
I think it's going to take a lot of work by all of us to do so. Clearly, the anti-immigrant narrative is gaining strength. It's a very easy one. I think it builds on real difficulties, and we need to understand what these are. I believe, for example, that the financial crisis led to a collapse in trust in governments. I do not believe that we would have seen the rise in nationalism and populism without that we're seeing around Europe and in North America particularly. This was compounded by COVID-19, a real fear of dangers coming from outside. And this is an old anti-immigration narrative. The word quarantine comes from this, in fact, keeping people away for 40 days, quarente. So I think this is deeply embedded in our fears as people of otherness, of foreignness, etc., that needs to be addressed. I also think it's important that those that are advocating for more migrants recognize the real pressures that people are facing. When we look at the evidence on why people are anti-immigrants, they talk about things like, I cannot afford housing, unaffordable housing. The public transport is increasingly congested and expensive. Longer waiting lists in the health services. Real austerity measures are leading people to feel a constraint on resources. And so I think we will not be able to address the agenda on migration unless we also, as a broader part of this, address issues like availability of housing, availability of public transport, etc. This is part of a broader package that makes people feel that it's not us or them that shares these resources. And of course, it's migrants who are going to increase the supply of many of these resources. We will not get more affordable houses without more migrants doing construction. We will not get better healthcare with more migrants in our healthcare system. But this argument needs to be made, and it needs to be followed through with broader, comprehensive actions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Ian. And now I turn to our next speaker and guest, Professor Gabriel Fall. The Honorable Professor Gabriel Fall is a multidisciplinary business and development executive. He is the co-founder and the director of GK Partners, specializing in social responsible business models, sustainable development, and program implementation. He is a visiting professor in a practice at the Feroz Lailaj Institute for Africa, London School of Economics, LSE, and a member of the Advisory Council of Carnegie African Diaspora Fellowship Program, the founder of Remit Aid, a program to transfer remittances into sustainable development finance. Professor, given your vast expertise on the field of migrants' economic contribution, would be really interesting to hear more about the diaspora economic engagement and how this engagement can better leverage the through global compact of migration and the realization of the sustainable development goals. Over to you.
Thank you very much, and I take the opportunity to thank IOM for the invitation. I'm an old friend of IOM, and I had the good fortune in the UN General Assembly of 2016, which also hosted the UN Summit on Migrants and Refugees. That is when IOM signed the instruments to be part of the UN family. And the legendary DG William Lacey Swing was in. And I noticed that when he signed us was coming down, I didn't see this senior team from IOM to go and meet him because the security was such that they were not let in. So I had the good fortune to be the first person to go and shake his hand. Now, with the question, DG Pope and Prof. Golding have given us a good background and setting of the facts and reality of migration. And a quick sort of clarification. All migrants are diaspora, but not all diaspora are migrants. So the population of diaspora is bigger The migrants are a subset of it. So that bigger population, and to focus on the nexus between migration and development, is to say it is not only immediate to the migrant, but it's over generations. So it's transformational. Thus, the role of migrants and diaspora to civilization and human development is so ingrained. In my view, I sit in the crossroads of what you, the policy people, do, and institutions, academics. I see myself more as a practitioner. So I am often pushing and challenging our brainy colleagues who say that policy and academia to assist us. Because I think in the past 100, 150 years, the paradigm of migration hasn't changed. It's effectively the 5 L's: 3 reactive and 2 proactive. Reactive in that we migrate to protect life, limb, and liberty. Or we migrate to improve livelihoods and lifestyles. The first 3 are essential, and the other 2 tend to be demonized, but it is a most civilized thing indeed to want to improve one's. So the so-called economic migrant who's targeted and say you do not have the rights, what's evil about it? Nothing. It is a good thing to want to improve one's livelihood and lifestyle, and then families, communities, and countries. And the overwhelming evidence of the importance and benefits of migration and diaspora, so eloquently demonstrated by publications, including more recent, the Professor Golding's one, is so true. Yet we still have to convene like this. We still have to engage with an anti-force. So what's going on here? In my humble opinion, the response to migration diaspora, like many other things, is a human affair. So it's not entirely rational, because humans, we are not reason only. In fact, we are less reason than emotion. So one has to, and I don't think we on the, to one of a better phrase, pro-migration side, are not always fully able to balance this. Since the case is overwhelming about the humanity and the rationality of migration, we then say, but why not? But reality is, and it's us in this room, in our countries, us here, there are countries who oppose it and take action that's opposite. Why? Now, some may say they're cutting their face, their nose to spite their face. Of course, if you do that, you are not only bloody, you're ugly as well. But you may look heroic. If you say, I'm doing it for this heroic reason, you may. And this is how we operate. So then on our side, as it were, we need to go beyond the moral repulsion that we have people who oppose what we think is a good and normal thing. Why they do it should not, in my view, bother us too much. The fact is, it is. The psychology is that even in our small group of friends, there is always, humans behave like this, the idea of an outsider. And who's the quintessential outsider? The migrant. Yes. That is by definition. So it is not surprising to target the ills of society to that quintessential outsider. So we need to learn, in my view, the skills and the ruthless operational efficiency of how to manage this troubled and imbalanced dynamic. Policies, as far as they're concerned, we've got enough. Some of you who I know would know that I didn't even think we needed a global compact for migration, because I thought what we have is good enough for anybody who wants to do good. Yeah. But we have it. We have the Sustainable Development Goals. It's here. So let's extract what we have from there for the bureaucratic legitimacy that is hung on this policy. So it's then, in my view, the era of practice. And if you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, we are on the countdown. If it was a boxing match, SDG are on the ropes, and we're counting them down. 5 years to go. So what is it we do? And this is the positive part of it. You see pockets everywhere of good practice, people saying, in spite of the opposition, we are developing innovations, bringing the best of skills from civil society, from business. You borrow and steal as long as it works to make things work. The United Nations Network on Migration had put together a portal on good practices. That is a good place to look at some of the stuff we do. And I'll just comment that for myself, I'm happen to be from the small country of the Gambia. I've lived all my adult life abroad. But I refer to Gambia as small country, big migration. In the continental Africa, it's the most dependent on remittances per capita. If you believe World Bank figures, it's 33%. If you believe Central Bank of the Gambia figures, it may be up to 50%, 60%. So, but through the technical work we've been doing with the Central Bank of the Gambia, now the data on remittances, the governor of the Central Bank is able to announce it 5 days after the end of the year. So I think we're #1 in the world. And that's based on not theories, not big ideas of why remittances is important, but the practicality of getting the data, including people who don't want to give it to you. But how do you entice them, encourage them, and cajole them? That's it. And sometimes they say the other side, that is, the people who want to stop this, you have to give it to them. Sometimes you grudging admiration about their ruthless efficiency in stopping what we want. So, in fact, so I think it's that debate. So we've got the global compact. We have to home in, IMRF is coming on, as to the practicalities. And in my view, only 20% should be discussion around policy frameworks. 80% is how do we make it happen? And finally, Dr. Marie McAuliffe convinced me, IOM, about 5, 6 years ago, to do a paper for her on delivering and demonstrating what I call migration dividend. This result, we have to not deliver it, we have to demonstrate it so that those who doubt would see it and those who don't want it would still be vested that they cannot let go. The reverse is true. We talk of regular pathways here. In my own country, United Kingdom, we have it in law to refer to illegal migrants. We have an illegal migration. So in this room, we're losing, you know. We're losing legislation, not general parlance. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor. Can I just in a couple of minutes, I come back to you on the question of youth engagement, which is quite essential. Now, can you share some insights on effective avenues to engage the youth, including within the diaspora communities?
Yes, again, talking about the practice, from 2017, we started using Gambia as a sort of case study because it's small. And I tell partners, let's just do this. If we fail, it's no big deal. You've not lost a lot. It's small Gambia. So let's go. So some of these successes we've had help demonstrate this. And this is true particularly in Africa, where you have the most youthful population. And it's without saying that the future is youthful. So when we talk of the countries that do not have youthful population, they still need those youth. And that brings us to the point of sort of migration, labor migration we're talking about. On that part, and Amy, you did make the point about the linkage of skills to migration to development. So that's a powerful way where then, if you link it to the idea of migration dividend, this is intricately and integral to the welfare of the people. In the United Kingdom, when the National Health Service was set up, in rural parts of the country, urban doctors would not want to go there. That is what started with Indian doctors, Sri Lankan, African doctors. There was racism. But you know what? The racists loved their lives more than they hated the blacks. And because you had the one who's holding your life is the black doctor, it kind of slightly changed it. This is it about youth as well. So they may fear the youth who are different culture, different country to come. But that youth, if they are so useful, not only to a person, to a family, to everybody, it kind of helps break it down. And on our part, those who promote labor migration, it's not enough to just send it. These soft emotional parts are extremely important to do that. And then with the skills, you then look forward as to what is it, what are the skills that would be needed in the next 30, 40 years, and prepare the people. I'm pretty sure Philippines is in the room. They've got experience over years in doing that. You know, to a lesser or more degree, to me, in my mind, more successful than unsuccessful in that sense. And then with the diaspora particularly, their contribution, I think Ian mentioned, it's not only cash, but intellectual and skills. By the time you develop programs and projects whereby you mix this, you are getting benefits beyond just sending cash. In Gambia, Objective 19 of the Global Compact has, amongst other things, asking countries to create diaspora development funds. We have, Gambia has. So we've done that, and we piloted it during COVID, and for a small country of 2.5 million people, the fund supported by the government of Switzerland had given out has run 67 projects, given out €500,000 in cash to diaspora who, for every euro you give them, bring 10 euro.
Excellent.
Yeah? And that had already created for a 2-year period 579 jobs in Gambia for young people, rural young people, and predominantly female. And that's not cash the diaspora is giving them. That is the leveraging point of bringing skills, bringing networks, and bringing a bit of cash. And the host government does nothing more than bring endorsement and administrative support, because they plead poverty, you see. So they say they have no cash, but what they have is good enough. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And I think that's all the time we have for this session. Very, very informative, a lot of information and a lot of advice on this. Regular migration and safe pathways remains one of the most key strategic pillars for IOM, but also for all of us in this room to think about and find and seize the opportunity of having regular pathways, a strategic vision to move forward and a solution. I'd like, before I hand over to my colleague, I'd like to thank Professor Ian and Professor Gabriel, and of course our Director General, Amy Pope. From me, Muhammad Ali, thank you so much for listening, and back to my colleague.
Thank you so much. Don't go anywhere, anybody. Thank you so much, everybody. But very importantly, it's now time to hear from you in the room. We have 15 minutes now where we can take questions, comments from the delegates, from anybody. And I see immediately the ambassador of El Salvador. Señora, amiga mía, tienes la palabra. Puede comenzar. Gracias.
Muchas gracias por traer un poquito de español también, señora moderadora. Un saludo especial a la mesa, especialmente a nuestras dos panelistas que han luchado mucho por estos temas desde hace muchos años, y también un agradecimiento a los panelistas que nos han aportado sus invaluables conocimientos. 3 aspectos quería agregar nuestra delegación a esta conversación o a este diálogo. El primero, referido a esta suerte de coalición, si me permiten el concepto, entre la aspiración de ese recalibraje de las políticas migratorias que nos animaba nuestra directora general a impulsar, y las narrativas que también han sido objeto de abordaje en el debate, porque efectivamente pareciera ser que colisionan de alguna manera y en lugares en particular esa colisión nos impacta muchísimo. Y en ese sentido nos sumamos sin duda alguna a esta voz para el cambio de esa perspectiva hacia una mayor honestidad desde la alta política entre lo que son pues, las realidades demográficas que se enfrentan, sobre todo en el norte global, y esa perspectiva de política interna más enfocada hacia victorias tempranas en detrimento de lo que son las realidades o necesidades del mercado laboral en el corto, mediano y largo plazo. Tarde o temprano esto segundo se va a imponer y lo vemos de manera consistente como además, de hecho, las propias dinámicas migratorias han llevado a que personas con un background migratorio lleguen a asumir esos puestos de responsabilidad política tarde o temprano. Ese es el primer elemento que queríamos destacar. El segundo elemento es más bien referido a los países de origen, porque si bien es importante allanar el camino y generar esas aperturas o esas ventanas hacia mayores programas de movilidad laboral, también es importante que desde el origen se prepare con la debida antelación a las personas que van a tomar ventaja de estas vías regulares. En el caso de mi país, es ampliamente conocido el programa de movilidad laboral que tenemos con los países vecinos del norte del hemisferio, pero quería mencionar un programa muy exitoso que tenemos con Alemania, que es un país en términos de lingüística mucho más alejado que el norte del hemisferio, pero que ha sido muy exitoso desde que tenemos una preparación adecuada de las personas que están aplicando al programa para tomar las oportunidades laborales en el sector de cuidado en Alemania. Entonces, este tipo de experiencias sin duda nos inspiran y nos animan a continuar fortaleciendo nuestras capacidades para formar a las personas que están aplicando a estos programas. Y el tercer elemento que quería destacar es la importancia de también mantener un equilibrio para que los países en vías de desarrollo o del sur global no perdamos tampoco nuestra fuerza y nuestro talento en un exceso, digamos, de movilidad laboral, para garantizar también que haya un equilibrio que nos permita también tener suficiente fuerza laboral a nivel interno en los países de origen y lograr acercarnos a lo que muy bien decía nuestra directora general, hacer ese link entre el desarrollo y generar mejores condiciones para que no tengamos más, sobre todo, dinámicas de migración irregular. Muchísimas gracias, Michelle, querida.
Muchísimas gracias, la distinguida embajadora de El Salvador. 3 puntos muy esenciales. I'd like to give the floor now to the representative of ISESCO. Madam, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor. My name is Amir Al-Fadil. I'm here representing ISISCO, headquartered in Morocco. I'm the former African Union Commissioner responsible about migration, refugees, and IDPs. And serving the continent of Africa on these issues for 5 years, I would like to thank very much Madame Amy Bob for her presentation and her statement. She touched on all the issues that of concern to all of us. And thank you also for visiting my country, Sudan. I followed very closely your visit to Sudan. I would like to comment only on 3 points, if you allow me. First, I agree with all that's being said about we have strategies and we have policies, whether on the continental level or on the national level of our countries. Most of our countries, they followed up the global compact. They have their strategies, they have their policies. So where is the problem? The problem is in the implementation.
That's exactly what you said.
And how this, yes, I agree what's been said by Professor Fall. Implementation is a problem on the national level and also in the countries of origin when it comes to migrants and on the side of the countries of destination. There is no link. So when you spoke about labor markets and the necessity for the labor markets, who is going to strike this conversation between the countries of origin that have the migrants, they want to migrate, especially the economic migrants, and the countries that they have opportunities in their labor markets? Who is going to do it? This issue, I think this can be, the answer can be IOM and other partners can do it, to strike this conversation, to look for the opportunities. The second point I would like to comment on is the youth. We have to talk about the youth in this conversation, because the youth in our countries are the ones who are very desperate to leave the country looking for opportunities abroad. Part of the problem, they have no opportunities at home. How are we going to create opportunities for the youth at home? How? And this is the question of development, because here you are talking about linking development, sustainable development, to issues of migration. So we have to look to the root causes, to the drivers, and focusing on the youth and looking for opportunities at home, how to have startup programs, entrepreneurship programs, how to link it with the opportunities within the country itself, the economic opportunities. This is also another issue. The third issue I would like to speak on, and to finish with it, when Madame Amy Bob spoke about the number or the death toll that increased, we have to ask ourselves why is it being increased? Because some of the countries, destination countries, I don't want to name countries, but because they have worked on this management of the borders in a very severe way, intercepting migrants, preventing them from crossing the Mediterranean. It's an issue. They are celebrating on the other side that the number of the migrants is decreasing, but they are not linking the number of the decrease happened in the migrants, receiving migrants, with the death on the other side. I think this is a very difficult question, but we have to ask ourselves why, and we have to talk to these people about the human rights of these migrants. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Madam, and thank you again for your service as African Union Commissioner. We all appreciated very much your 5 years tenure in that role. I have two more requests for the floor, and then we'll be wrapping up. I'd like to turn now to the representative of the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, to be followed by the African Union IOM Migration Youth Ambassador. Please, the representative of UNHCR, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and I will speak for UNHCR today, both from the perspective of so-called route-based approach and more particularly what we call complementary pathways within UNHCR. We have very much enjoyed the partnership with the IOM in the most recent years, when we have also started on the conversation of inclusion of refugees in safe and legal pathways, and ensuring that that population, many of the states here are host states to many of the individuals who are refugees, is fully included in the opportunities and the legal migration pathways that are coming together. This often includes labor migration and programming around skilling to hire, but also access to family reunification opportunities and facilitation of this work that we would very much like to continue joint engagement with. We have very much appreciated the collaboration that has started in the last year around so-called route-based approach that looks particularly at ensuring that refugees are provided with viable opportunities to move regularly using their skills, experience, resilience against opportunities that are emerging within the migration and development sector, and would appreciate working with all of you and the IOM in enhancing that partnership to ensure that refugees are a part of the conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your comments, and I know we appreciate it very much, the collaboration. Oh, I say we still, I've now retired from IOM, but IOM very much appreciates the collaboration with UNHCR in exactly the arena you just said. Let me now turn, to the League of Arab States IOM Migration Youth Ambassador. You have the floor.
نشكركم على هذه الجلسة الثرية ونثمن ما جاء في خطاباتكم. نتفق على أن الهجرة تمثل مجالا مهما للاستثمار وابتكار الحلول، وتتطلب مقاربات جديدة للتعامل مع تعقيداتها بشكل فعال. ومع ذلك قد يكون من السهل تصور هذه الحلول والأفكار في ظل ظروف مستقرة سياسيا واجتماعيا، ولكن في أوقات الاضطرابات والنزاعات تصبح الحاجة إلى اتخاذ إجراءات تركز على الأسباب الجذرية للصراعات. وفي مثل هذه الظروف ينبغي التركيز على تنسيق الجهود بين جميع الأطراف المعنية لمعالجة التحديات والأسباب، قبل العمل على تطوير استراتيجيات طويلة الأمد لتحويل الهجرة إلى فرصة. في المنطقة العربية والتي تستضيف 41 مليون مهاجر، وهي منشأ ل 33 مليون مهاجر، وهي معبر أيضا للمهاجرين، وفي ظل ما تعانيه غزة ولبنان من العدوان الإسرائيلي، ويواجه السودان من ويلات حرب، تبرز تساؤلات حول ما إذا كانت هذه الأفكار والاستراتيجيات قادرة على الانتقال من الإطار النظري إلى التطبيقي العملي في ظل هذه الأزمات المستمرة. وأشكركم.
I'd like to thank very much the distinguished delegate of the of the League of the Arab States, and provide the last comment to the AU IOM Youth Ambassador, and then we'll return to the podium. Thank you. You have the floor.
Thank you so much for your invitation. I almost got confused there. So I hope we are all well. My name is Walter Kasempa, and as has been mentioned, I'm the AU IOM Migration Youth Ambassador for Africa, coming from the beautiful country of Zambia. So it's really great that the panelists have critically tackled the issue of young people. The young people of the world are the most consequential people in regards to migration globally, and we thank the panelists for that. So my question is, and it goes directly to the DG herself, what is the role of young people in political engagement, especially in regards to advocacy for migration policy frameworks? The reason I ask this question is the continent of Africa has got specific policies that align with the GCM, particularly the Free Movement Protocol. But you'll find that most of our African states, only 4 African states out of 55 have ratified this. So there's a clear sign that it is not a political priority in terms of ratification. And young migrants are the ones who are suffering. So how then can, young people leverage their skills, their innovation, their potential in ensuring that their advocacy becomes something that is policy impactful for African states, so that we have policies that enable the facilitation of regular pathways for migration? Thank you.
Thank you very much to our youth ambassador, and you're quite right. And I'm delighted that we've brought on youth ambassadors in IOM. It's essential for the reasons that you said. And let me turn to the Director General for her response to your question.
Look, that's why you're here, right? It's why we have, we recognize the power of youth to change the conversation. We recognize that it's essential not just for the current situation, but most importantly for the future. When you look at the demographic changes that we're going to see around the world over the next several decades, you are poised to change the direction of travel. And frankly, it's critical that you do so, because we know that the forces of things like climate change are going to be displacing communities at records that we don't fully appreciate yet. So for us at IOM, this has meant bringing in youth ambassadors,
creating platforms for young people to contribute, as we saw last week in the COP negotiations. We had IOM youth ambassadors engaged in the negotiations, engaged in advocacy, engaged in communications. We're committed to providing a platform so that you can be part of the solutions that are needed for our future. And we hope that our member states and other parties who are involved here today will help us amplify those opportunities for you.
Thank you very much, Director General. Let me hand the floor back to our moderator, Muhammad Ali, to wrap up, thank our panelists, and allow us to move on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Muhi. We are a couple of minutes above time, so I want to say thanks for our panelist. Professor Ian had a commitment, so he had to leave, but also I would like to thank Professor Gabriel for your amazing contribution and attendance, and Director General for the insights that we have been given about, like the value and the opportunities that regular and safe pathways represents, and also think and unpack like the challenges ahead of us and how we need to have a unified, holistic approach with societies, with governments, with the civil society, private sector, and all different actors. Really, thank you so much for for the contributions from different colleagues, and attendees. Special thanks to colleagues and member states and everyone in the room. Really appreciate your engagement and your listening, and thank you so much for this. Thank you.
And thanks to Muhammad Ali for moderating this session. Thank you so much. May I invite you to retake your seats in the room, and let me invite the speakers and moderator for the next session to please come join me on the podium.
How is it that you've left?
January 2020. Were you in Quito?
In Quito?
Yes, that's when we last saw.
Last time we saw each other? Oh my God. I'm going to invite you.
Indeed,
Come see
indeed.
me.
Thank you.
I want to take your picture before you go, so
sure.
don't sit down.
Please, thanks, yes.
In lieu of my official photographer. Oh,
Yes,
there she is.
he's coming. Okay, she's coming. Yeah. Yes. Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
I loved your intervention. I just loved it.
Thank you so much. And I'll see you then.
So as our speakers and moderator get settled, let me welcome you to our first panel. I know it seems like a second, but this is the first substantive panel. You just had the introductory. Thank you very much, Patricia. And this session will focus on practical approaches to bolster sustainable development, a theme that came up in all three presentations we just heard from the Director General, from Professor Golden, from Jibril Fall. But this focus is very much deeply on the contributions to sustainable development and how to improve them. And to moderate this session, it gives me great pleasure to welcome Maria Dimitriado. She is the World Bank Special Representative to the UN and head of the World Bank Geneva office here. She is a national of Greece with more than 25 years of experience in the World Bank Group, the European Commission, and the public and private sectors. She joined the World Bank Group in 2015 as Senior International Affairs Officer in the Brussels office, where she worked on the World Bank Group's strategic relationship and partnership with the EU and other Brussels-based interlocutors. Prior to that, she worked as a policy officer at the Directorate General of Economic and Financial Affairs of the European Commission, where she worked on relations with European and international financial institutions, including on promoting the use of innovative financial instruments. It gives me great pleasure to turn the floor over to Maria. Thank you so much for joining us today. To you.
Thank you very much, Michelle. I'm delighted to join you today. Thank you very much to IOM colleagues for the kind invitation to contribute and participate in this very important discussion. Let us jump straight to the point because we have about an hour and a half at our disposal, and we want to make sure that we hear from our distinguished panelists, but also from all of you in the audience. Now, while millions of people are already migrating globally, as we heard previously, current crises, including climate change and conflict, along with demographic changes and income disparities between countries, are increasing migration pressures. At the time of the World Development Report on migrants, refugees, and societies last year, that also focused on the intersection between migration and development, 184 million people were on the move as migrants around the world, driven by economic opportunities, conflict and violence, and other reasons. Some 43% live in low and middle-income countries, and many countries at all income levels are both origin, transit, and destination countries at the same time. As we heard in the fantastic, I must say, setting the scene panel previously, the evidence is clear. Well-managed migration significantly enhances sustainable development outcomes for everyone involved. However, these benefits are not a given. The success of migration in terms of where, how, and with what outcomes people migrate is heavily influenced by the options available to them. To transform regular migration pathways into true development pathways, there is need for an ecosystem of responsive governance arrangements, robust cooperation, and meaningful partnerships that can balance the priorities, needs, and expectations of a diverse range of stakeholders as we have in the room today. So I have the immense honor to introduce our panel. Let me start by Minister Jorge Pedro Mauricio dos Santos. Minister Santos has had a distinguished career in politics and public service, including roles as a national deputy, deputy in the Pan-African Parliament of the African Union, the president of the National Assembly of Cabo Verde from 2016 to 2021. He has also served as the mayor of Ribeira Grande, Santo Antão, and has been involved in various national and international organizations, including the Association of Municipalities Santo Antão and the National Association of Municipalities of Cabo Verde. Additionally, he is a member of the National Political Commission of the Movement for Democracy and coordinates the party's external relations. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Minister. Ms. Anita Vella is Head of Unit for Legal Pathways and Integration at the European Commission's Directorate General for Migration and Home Affairs. Ms. Vella is responsible for legal pathways and integration policy at the European Commission since November 2021. Her work includes development and coordination of talent pathways to the EU, talent partnerships, resettlement, and complementary pathways to the EU. Prior to that, she was a political assistant to the Director General for Migration and Home Affairs and Deputy Head of Unit dealing with the Asylum, Migration, and Integration Fund for the Mediterranean region, as well as Deputy Head of Unit for the EU Employment Strategy in the Director General for Employment and Social Policies. She has started her career in the European Commission in 2005, where she occupied different positions. And before joining the European Commission, she served as a program manager at the Office of the Prime Minister in Malta. Welcome, Anita. Mr. Jose Eduardo Royo Oropesa is the Executive Secretary of the Regional Conference on Migration in Mexico. Jose Eduardo has been appointed as the Executive Secretary of the Regional Conference on Migration since 2024 by IOM Mexico. He has more than 15 years of experience in public policy and international negotiations, and has been trained in analyzing national, regional, and global contexts to identify and solve the challenges faced by the institution, traits that you try to practice in your current role. He has been representative of the Mexican government in various bilateral and regional delegations, as well as in various multilateral organizations and mechanisms on international cooperation, international migration, such as the United Nations, the OECD, the Pacific Alliance, the Regional Conference on Migration, the World Forum on Migration and Development, among others. And last but not least, of course, is Ms. Emilia Saiz, the Secretary General of United Cities and Local Governments. Ms. Saiz is a jurist by profession, and she has devoted her professional life to promoting the role of local governments in development, as well as fostering relations between cities and their associations worldwide. She started her journey as local government international advocate in the founding organization of the UCLG in 1997. She has led programs dedicated to institutional capacity building and decentralized cooperation. She has actively promoted women empowerment, social inclusion, and international partnerships. Ms. Saiz played a critical role in setting up the Global Task Force of Local and Regional Governments, and has followed and represented local and regional governments in key international processes, such as the Rio and Beijing +20, as well as the Climate Agreement, the SDGs, and Habitat. And she has been further deeply involved in the institutional development of United Cities and local governments into a network of networks. Welcome. It's a pleasure to join you all today. Now, let me start with you, Minister Santos. Diaspora is a true catalyst for sustainable development. Through remittances, migrants sent to countries of origin. As of 2023, remittances back to home countries totaled about 656 billion, according to our analysis in the World Bank. But contributions extend well beyond that. As diasporas drive and help the circulation of fresh visions, new ideas, and innovations, and in a bold and collaborative action, the government of Cabo Verde, together with IOM, has recently launched the Global Diaspora Policy Alliance. Could you tell us a little bit more about the alliance, its aims, and could you share with us the design, how it ensures inclusivity and collaboration among a broad range of stakeholders that may have different priorities and needs in order to create practical solutions as we aim to achieve with this discussion today? Over to you.
Merci, Madame la modérateur de cette panel. Je commence pour dire bonjour à tous, de remercier la directeure générale de l'OIM, Amy Pope, pour l'invitation à participer dans ce dialogue international sur l'immigration, de dire que Cap-Vert, c'est un pays insulaire, des îles au milieu de l'Atlantique, où 70% de sa population est émigrant, et la diaspora capverdienne, et 30% résidents. Et cette réalité a commencé il y a 2 siècles et demi, 250 ans, que notre population a commencé à émigrer à cause des difficultés au niveau des îles pour la survivance, mais principalement pour chercher des moyens. On a commencé à émigrer à les États-Unis comme maritime et pour travailler dans les plantations agricoles, où nous avons maintenant plus que 720 000 Cap-Verdiens de 5 générations, aussi à l'Europe, à l'Afrique, à l'Asie, où maintenant nous sommes notre diaspora est en 42 pays du monde. Ça veut dire que nous sommes un pays de diaspora. C'est pour cela que on a, ça fait quelques dizaines d'années, commencé à voir la diaspora comme un potentiel essentiel et endogène de notre pays. On a commencé pour définir une politique publique pour faire l'engagement des diasporas et son potentiel au niveau du processus de développement national, mais en même temps de les aider à s'intégrer dans les pays d'accueil. Ça, c'est important. Pour bien intégrer au niveau du pays d'origine, il doit être bien intégré dans le pays d'accueil. À cause de ça, on a défini une politique publique d'engagement, de vrai engagement de notre potentiel endogène, la diaspora, dans le processus de développement national, qui est défini pour un plan stratégique des actions, des politiques concrètes pour l'engagement et des investissements. À cause de ça, on a dialogué avec notre partenaire privilégié, l'OIM, pour organiser la conférence internationale sur l'engagement des diasporas du monde au niveau national. Et de cette conférence a sorti l'Alliance stratégique pour l'engagement des diasporas. Ça, c'est une alliance mondiale, c'est une solution pratique où engage tous les pays qui a signé la déclaration de Dublin pour l'engagement de diaspora, mais en même temps des autres pays qui participaient à Sal, à Cap-Vert, dans cette conférence, a sorti l'Alliance. L'Alliance, c'est une organisation dynamique. Maintenant, ça commence. On a défini comme objectif 3 le genre et jeunesse, action climatique et santé et bien-être, justement pour lier les conditions humaines à les conditions de changement climatique, la question d'environnement et bien-être des gens. Parce que pour nous, les Africains et les migrants du monde, ils sortent de sa famille, de son confort au niveau national, pour aller à l'étranger, travailler pour gagner le bien et les ressources pour développer sa famille et lui-même, c'est une condition héroïque. Il sort, c'est un entrepreneur qui va chercher le bien-être pour sa famille. Ça veut dire que l'Alliance se compose de 2 grands objectifs. En premier, c'est justement l'engagement des pays pour la définition des politiques publiques. Mais quand je parle de politique publique, je parle de conditions favorables au niveau fiscal, par exemple, au niveau des facilitations dans l'investissement. On a écouté beaucoup la remesse d'argent ici, des fonds, les remesses financières. Mais le plus important au niveau de notre diaspora, et diaspora d'Afrique et du monde, ce n'est pas seulement l'argent. À côté de l'argent, il y a la personne. Il y a les skills, le savoir-faire, la compétence, le capital humain, qui c'est la plus grande richesse de la diaspora au niveau du monde. Ça veut dire que, pour cela, c'est nécessaire de définir des politiques publiques concrètes. On commence pour les processus de reconnaissance des compétences et des niveaux de formation. Ça, c'est un problème qui, j'ai bien écouté le député, l'ambassadeur de l'Union européenne et africaine, quand il parlait de la jeunesse. Un des grands défis de notre mouvement migratoire, c'est la reconnaissance des compétences. Si je suis médecin, je ne peux pas travailler à l'UK comme infirmier, ou comme servant, ou comme travailleur de construction civile. Si je suis économiste, la reconnaissance des compétences, des professions, ça c'est important. Mais pas seulement au niveau supérieur, au niveau professionnel. Si j'ai la formation professionnelle de premier niveau, maritime, tourisme, construction civile, technologie, etc., on doit travailler comme la reconnaissance des compétences. Ça, c'est important. Ça veut dire que, troisième point, c'est la coopération internationale. Quand on parle de politique publique, on doit parler de la diplomatie communautaire des diasporas. On doit travailler avec la Suisse, avec l'Europe, avec l'Afrique, l'Amérique, l'Asie, pour avoir des accords laboraux, de mobilité laborale, pour donner à les travailleurs, les immigrants, les mêmes droits que les nationaux où ils vivent. Parce que je suis ingénieur civil, je dois travailler ici en Suisse comme ingénieur civil et avoir le même droit que l'ingénieur civil de Suisse, ou de France, ou des États-Unis. Ça, c'est le défi que nous avons. C'est la reconnaissance des compétences et des niveaux de formation. Mais l'Alliance, nous avons autre chose d'important. C'est la question de promouvoir l'investissement. Mais pour promouvoir l'investissement, c'est facile de dire. Mais les immigrants, la diaspora connaît les opportunités d'investissement et de business que nous avons au niveau de notre pays. Ça, c'est la question. Madame la directrice générale a commencé pour dire que nous avons un guide d'investissement de la diaspora. Mais à côté du guide, nous avons un statut d'investissement de diaspora. Et aussi, nous avons tous les liens et les fonds d'investissement aussi. Par exemple, notre diaspora, maintenant, la diversification de son investissement est au niveau, par exemple, de bourse de valeur. On a créé le Diaspora Bond, le Green Bond, le Blue Bond. Ce sont les titres de marché de capitaux où les gens peuvent investir et rentabiliser sa économie personnelle. C'est autre forme de rentabilisation. C'est comme ça que l'Alliance, c'est une forme d'engagement des pays dans les politiques publiques, mais des politiques publiques concrètes, pas seulement pour faire politique, mais pour faire l'engagement des gens, des jeunes principalement. C'est pour cela qu'à Cap-Vert, on a signé, on a lancé l'Alliance. Maintenant, on travaille sur ça. Cap-Vert préside l'axe important que c'est l'action climatique. Pour des raisons qu'on peut comprendre, nous sommes des îles, un pays insulaire, maritime, où on souffre des changements climatiques, mais on doit transformer la mer comme potentiel de développement, l'économie bleue, exploiter toutes les potentialités qui existent. Et c'est comme ça, madame, que, pour dire, en résumé, qu'est-ce qui est l'Alliance, et on continue à inviter tous les pays du monde à entrer aussi au niveau de cette alliance, parce que c'est un potentiel pour faire la coopération et de créer les vraies conditions d'engager ce potentiel endogène que nous avons au niveau du monde, que c'est la diaspora et son ressource et son savoir-faire et aussi sa compétence dans les projets innovatrices et les start-up qu'ils peuvent porter au niveau des pays d'origine et ajouter au effort de développement des pays qui ont la diaspora, comme nous à Cap-Vert. Je peux parler du Sénégal, je peux parler du Soudan, du Mali, de Maroc ou d'autres pays d'Amérique latine. J'ai bien écouté Madame l'ambassadeur de Salvador quand elle parlait de ça, la question de compétences humaines, le capital humain. Ça, c'est important sur les personnes. Les gens, les immigrants ne sont pas des objets, ce sont les gens, les techniciens. Les gens qui peuvent transformer, qui peuvent ajouter valeur. Et c'est pour cela qu'on a créé l'Alliance pour l'engagement de la diaspora. Merci.
Thank you very much, Minister. It was very good to hear of your vast knowledge on working with your diasporas for Cape Verde and how you have projected the specific context of Cape Verde, leveraging the blue economy and all these initiatives, but also through the Global Diaspora Policy Alliance, how you contribute and bring together and convene the global community to promote practical solutions. And it was very, very good to hear you put the people in the center of all these efforts at the end of your intervention. Thank you so much. We'll have the possibility to come back to you. I'm moving to you, Ms. Vella. The EU's new Pact on Migration and Asylum that entered into force earlier this year outlines the vision for a humane and effective long-term response to current challenges of irregular migration by developing legal migration pathways, by better integrating refugees and other newcomers, as well as deepening migration partnerships with countries of origin and transit for mutual benefit. For you, as the head of unit focused on legal pathways and integration in the EU's DG Home, can you tell us more about what translating this vision into practice means concretely? Does anything need to change in the governance of migration issues? And as it relates to partnerships, what are the fundamental, we can say, elements needed for balanced partnerships to be mutually beneficial for countries in the EU, countries of origin and transit, and empowering migrants themselves?
Thank you so much, and good morning to everyone. It's an honor and a pleasure to be part of this panel representing the European Commission today. So indeed, quite a question there, a lot of elements, but it's the key ones. We did have a landmark agreement on the Pact on Migration in the European Union. This is really, really important. And it's also very important to emphasize that developing accessible legal and regular pathways is a key part of that big puzzle, which is the new Pact on Migration, and a key part of the comprehensive approach therein. Translating this vision into practice, this is at the essence, actually, of the work that we do, that I lead in the DG Home, what we call DG Home. It's one of the services of the European Commission. And I'd like to organize maybe what I speak to you about in three blocks. Because first and foremost, at the European Union level, what we have is a harmonized, so to speak, rule book, if you like, in terms of what are the conditions, what are the rights and responsibilities for third country nationals to migrate to the different member states of the European Union. And we have harmonized this rule book for specific categories of migrants. And it is very important, and that's the first pillar of our work, to make sure that the information and the rules are transparent and clear to everyone around the world that would like to migrate to the EU. So I think this is really, really important that we make this information accessible, so that as well third country nationals that then make use of these pathways are also able to know what are their rights and able to enforce them actually when they come and they are, let's say, employed in the European Union member states. To give you two examples of recent pieces of legislation, if you like, in this direction, we have the blue card at the European Union level, which is for the highly skilled. And we actually modernized those rules, and member states have been transposing those new rules into their national frameworks. So that's one work actually that we will now be taking forward to make sure, of course, that between the rules and the practice, there is a proper alignment. I think a lot of you mentioned implementation. Again, I will come to it. This is really, really the key in my view of what we should look at. But of course, before implementation, there's also the legislation. And second concrete example is, I hope some of you or most of you know about that, we have something called the single permit procedure. And as part of the Pact on Migration, this year we have managed to agree with the EU member states to actually shorten this procedure. So this is the procedure of acquiring a work permit and a visa to come and work in the European Union. And we have managed to agree to make this process more efficient in terms of how much time that permit is actually issued. So we go to 90 days for the issuing of that permit. And we have also instilled in this piece of legislation the right for the third country national to actually change employer when they come with this single permit. And this is an important element in order to make sure that third country nationals do not maybe find themselves in that situation of potential exploitation and feel that they have no way out. So these are just two examples of this rule book that we seek to harmonize, but what is very important there is to make sure that this is clear and accessible in terms of information. And we actually have something called the EU Immigration Portal, which is a platform, a website, where you can actually go and see what are the rules in the different EU member states in that sense, and who you have to reach out to and contact, etc. Another element as part of the pact, in order to really transform this vision into practice, is a dedicated union framework, so European Union framework, for the way we are doing resettlement and humanitarian admission. So, of course, this is for people in need of protection, and it is for the most vulnerable. But these are nevertheless, actually regular pathways for those people in need of them. And for the first time, we have a piece of legislation at the European level that will harmonize the way EU member states actually do the admission procedure, of course, in cooperation with UNHCR when this is applicable, but also other potential organizations when it comes to humanitarian admission. And this is relevant because we will be together working on a union plan. So, of course, it's the voluntary, let's say, will of EU member states to do resettlement and humanitarian admission, but we will be discussing how at European Union level we align and become more strategic in the humanitarian pathways that we are offering, of course, globally to help those people in need. And thirdly, of course, the sustainable integration of migrants. This is key, whether you are coming with a regular pathway for work, whether you are coming with a pathway for protection. We really are working with, as well, not just EU member states, but also regions and local communities to make sure that, of course, there are the necessary pre-departure support provided to the people that would be coming to the European Union, and that the societies are actually prepared to welcome those people. And when I say to welcome, we are really encouraging, approaches that are whole of society oriented. So of course it is not just about having a job and the right conditions, but it is also about, finding accommodation, being helped with childcare, anything you need. So really we try and encourage this holistic approach to integration. Then, yes, when it comes to migration governance and what if we should change, it is complex. I think, as all of you know, there are so many actors, right, involved in migration governance. What we really want to see is that we actually all come together and really join forces. So instead of working in silos and in isolation, I think the topic of regular pathways is what should be bringing all actors together. And by all actors, I also mean the private sector, actually, and the employers. So we hear a lot about the need for filling labor shortages, but how can we, bring everyone to the same platform to discuss, let's say, with specific partner countries, what are really the jobs that need to be filled, and how can we make sure that partner countries are actually preparing in terms of skills development and potential need for recognition of comparison of skills and qualifications, and how can potential employers actually be part of that process and that conversation from the very beginning, instead of let's say having their own individual parallel track, etc. So I think really when it comes to migration governance, and what I think we need to work together upon, is to come together around the same table. Voila. And then in terms of, yes, and I know I have to finish because the time is pressing. Definitely our pathways, our partnerships need to be development oriented. This is what we do. So we have launched specific talent partnerships with specific partner countries, and us as European Commission actually have been facilitating this conversation between those interested EU member states. So we come together as Team Europe and we sit around the table and discuss with a partner country of what are our joint objectives. And by joint objectives, I do not mean that all the talent of that country will be coming to the European Union. Not at all. We are actually discussing circular migration schemes. We are discussing investment in the vocational and educational training of those partner countries. And we are also discussing, very important here for me, how we go from project-based cooperation initiatives to a system-oriented way of doing labor mobility. So how can we really, create an ecosystem in the country of origin that allows that country to actually source potential, pathways, not just, of course, to the European Union, but to other parts of the world and more globally. I end there. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was great to hear, Ms. Vella, of your efforts at the EU level to inspire transparency and predictability to people moving with a rule book and other tools, but also the idea of whole of society, comprehensive solutions and more systematic approaches that can basically leverage labor mobility and link it with development. Thank you very much. And I'm sorry for the pressure. It is my Swiss watch here that is ruthless. So I'm moving. This is a great segue to move and dive deeper into regional and local levels. So I'm coming to you, Mr. Oropesa. The climate crisis, demographic shifts, and more broadly, transformations to the world as we know it have no border. In our interdependent world, it is obvious that no state on its own, on isolation, can manage how the profound global transformations that the world experiences today shape up migration trends. The needs of countries are more likely to be met if considered together, and collective gains reward collaboration on migration governance. Could you talk to us about the latest initiatives of the Regional Conference on Migration and how practically can regional consultative processes, such as the one that you work in, which provides a space for respectful, frank and honest discussions among its 11 members and 5 observers spanning the Americas, can be leveraged to transform regular migration pathways into true development pathways? Over to you. And I'm showing that I have a very good Swiss watch here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to make my intervention in Spanish. Permítanme iniciar diciendo que nací en México, estoy basado en Costa Rica, y el programa dice que represento a Belice. Y es correcto, porque el día de hoy tengo el honor de venir en representación de la presidencia pro tempore 2024 de la Conferencia Regional sobre Migración, que corresponde a ese hermoso país. La Conferencia Regional sobre Migración, o CRM, como es bien conocida, está a punto de cumplir 30 años. Estamos hablando de 3 décadas, casi 3 décadas de trabajo ininterrumpido, inclusive durante la pandemia, que nos permiten tener algo de experiencia en los procesos consultivos en materia migratoria. Porque si fueran pocos, 11 países, estos 11 países son los 7 centroamericanos, los 3 norteamericanos y República Dominicana, estamos fortaleciendo nuestra alianza y nuestra colaboración con la Conferencia Sudamericana sobre Migraciones, donde están los 12 países, son 12 países y además están los 5 países observadores de la CRM, y estamos trabajando en generación de planes en materia de protección, de integración y garantía de derechos humanos en una convocatoria casi continental. Lo que acabo de explicar motiva, como lo hacen todas nuestras actividades, a una migración segura, ordenada y regular, pero también al desarrollo de las comunidades tanto de origen como de destino. Y esto lo hacemos mediante distintas actividades en la conferencia que van desde productos tangibles hasta talleres y otro tipo de actividades técnicas que contribuyen a lo que estamos hablando aquí el día de hoy. Estamos hablando sobre cursos en línea para combatir el trabajo infantil, diplomados para la lucha contra la trata y el tráfico forzoso de personas en movilidad, instrumentos regionales de identificación de vulnerabilidades de personas migrantes en fronteras, guías de protección en contexto de desastres y el cambio climático, también seminarios sobre la importancia del enfoque psicosocial en la protección de niños, niñas y adolescentes no acompañados, seminarios de acceso a servicios de identidad legal y herramientas de mapeo de la diáspora, ya que hemos hablado aquí tanto sobre cómo la diáspora contribuye al desarrollo de las comunidades, congresos sobre mujeres migrantes, foros de buenas prácticas en materia de mecanismos de regularización y costos relacionados, entre muchas otras actividades y productos tangibles, como mencionaba, que esta conferencia produjo durante este año con el apoyo de organismos internacionales, el empuje de una red regional de organizaciones de la sociedad civil, que es una parte fundamental de esta conferencia y quien está en terreno para identificar todos estos espacios que se deben de llenar desde las autoridades, el sector público y todos los actores que intervienen y que también, por supuesto, forman parte de esta conferencia. Y, por supuesto, los 11 estados miembros bajo el liderazgo de Belice en este 2024. Como presidencia pro tempore, Belice ha abrazado el tema de los derechos humanos y la dignidad para todos. asegurando que esta visión guíe el curso del trabajo de la conferencia. Al fomentar colaboración e impulsar nuevas alianzas, Belice ha demostrado cómo los estados más pequeños también pueden liderar la configuración de la gobernanza de la migración. Este liderazgo ha sido fundamental para expandir el alcance de la Conferencia Regional sobre Migración, al tiempo que se preserva la integridad de sus relaciones fundamentales con otros actores clave como la propia Conferencia Sudamericana sobre Migraciones y otros procesos. La representación de Belice ha participado en diálogos claves, incluidos el proceso de Quito, de Banjul, la OEA, y ha garantizado que las prioridades de la Conferencia Regional sobre Migración sean relevantes a nivel regional y más allá. En virtud de lo anterior, respondería que todas estas acciones de protección de derechos vinculan a los migrantes de manera directa con el desarrollo, no solo en lo económico, sino social y cultural de las comunidades en las que se encuentran. Como ustedes saben, los países de Centroamérica, Norteamérica y el Caribe no tienen políticas migratorias homogéneas. Inclusive hay países en esa región que no adoptaron el Pacto Mundial de Migración de una manera formal. Sin embargo, eso no nos ha limitado ni nos ha impedido avanzar, principalmente en el diálogo técnico, la construcción de una agenda compartida y una visión conjunta donde las soberanías, o hasta donde las soberanías y las leyes de cada país lo permitan. Concluyo diciendo que este tipo de actividades, de instrumentos y la experiencia y el empuje, sobre todo, son algunos de los aportes de la Conferencia Regional sobre Migración, y eso es lo que tiene para ofrecer y que pone a su disposición de todas y todos ustedes. Moderadora, le regreso la palabra.
Thank you very much. Important efforts to contribute to the development of both origin and hosting countries, but also you highlighted the importance of protection and human rights of the people who are in the move, who are often very, very vulnerable. Thank you very much. I'm moving to Ms. Dai. Migration is a global phenomenon, but by and large, a reality that is experienced day to day, mostly at a local level. At a time of rapid urbanization, there is an anticipation of 5 billion people that will be living in urban areas by 2050. But at this time, the migration and displacement are also increasingly urban, with 65% of SDG targets being linked to local government activity. Local and regional governance is also key to building balanced, regular migration pathways. So my question to you is, considering the breadth and geographical scope of experiences from United Cities and local governments as a global network, can you tell us about innovative solutions that effectively harness the power of migration from a local level? How can such solutions be replicated and scaled up?
Well, thank you very much, and thank you particularly for giving the voice to local and regional government perspectives into this debate. Indeed, my organization, United Cities and Local Governments, is a very broad network with over 250,000 members of over 160 countries. And that means that we sit at both ends of recipients and emitting migration. And this is where also those lines are becoming very, very fuzzy, like they are in the real world. There are very few countries that can say they only receive migrants. Countries also emit migrants. And for us, those lines are very important to realize. It's also important for us to realize what do pathways look like? What does it mean to regulate pathways? And so we are looking probably at local service provision. The reason why people emigrate is, yes, to get a better job, but they also look for safety, they look for health, they look for education. Those are the things that people look for. And so any pathway needs to include these services. And those services everywhere in the world are mostly provided in a range of 65% of the cases by local and regional governments. And local and regional governments, however, are missing from many of these structural conversations. You are asking for examples, and the organized constituency of local and regional governments, including the mayors mechanism of the GFMD and sister organizations like the Mayors Migration Council, are trying to gather all of this intelligence. We're trying to gather those examples, and they exist. They exist in collaborations with private sectors between cities in the Netherlands, for instance, including Utrecht, and cities in Kenya. They include in cases like Barranquilla, who is working with border cities around in Colombia. They include with cities like Quezon in the Philippines. We are trying to develop structural relations. But I will be very honest with you. They don't exist in the scale that we need them to exist, and they don't exist with the means or the competencies that local and regional governments would need to have to actually make this workable or meaningful at the scale that we are seeking in this very room. And that is the part that we don't understand. If you are looking for a whole of society approach, and you are looking for the right platform to make that whole of society happen, how is it that you are not working with the closest level of government to the people? And how is it that you are not ensuring that local and regional governments, city governments like that of Geneva, like that of Barcelona, are not involved in the structuring dialogue with the diasporas? How is it possible that once that you break down the barriers that are built around borders and national governments, think work, and Warsaw can proudly say that they have welcomed thousands of migrants and refugees from Ukraine, and that they are all working, and that everything is fine, that the children are in schools, and that we still keep so many of those barriers in other places. How is that possible? How is it possible that in a region like Europe that was able to come back from the Second World War through friendship, through training of cities, we have not learned enough to make sure that the dialogue is around local service provision and competencies that break down the barriers for migrants to integrate. If you talk to any mayor in the world, they all are very aware that the numbers that are provided around migration in their countries are much lower than what they are absorbing every day in their cities. But yet, 16 non-accompanied minors in my country, Spain, become a huge diplomatic problem and a huge governance problem, while we are absorbing many, many more in any neighborhood that you live, in my city, in Barcelona. So what we are asking here is, yes, follow our examples, provide the capacity and the investment for local and regional governments to be able to provide the local service that will give a dignified life to the migrants. Yes, please do that. But also let us have the hard conversation of the different type of competencies that local and regional governments would need to actually have a seat at the dialogue table to shape those pathways. Because unless you have local and regional governments sitting there with specific competencies, we will continue to do very small pilot projecting that sometimes end up with our mayors facing justice in their countries because of their efforts to try to give education and jobs to the migrants that arrive to the cities. All the good examples of countries that have absorbed migrations in a significant way, Turkey, for instance, and our membership there has done great efforts to provide education and jobs to many, many refugees, like Syrian refugees. But also the efforts done around Europe have involved local and regional governments in a significant manner, and local service provision is at the heart of the investment that needs to be done. this is not about numbers, this is about neighbors. If you want to establish structural relations between the diaspora, if you want to shift educational patterns, and if you want to talk about jobs beyond production and put care at the center of societies of the future, you will need to establish a different type of conversation with the sphere of government that is at the heart of providing that type of service. At this moment, this is not happening. That's why it's not working. Implementation is not working because the people that are at the heart of that shift are not in the room, and one voice like mine is not enough. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Said, for underlying the importance of taking a whole of society approach and how important the role of local and regional governments are in this respect. But the bottom line of if we want solutions to be scaled up, you need to ensure that all stakeholders are participating and contributing to the debate. So, Michelle, I would like to hand the floor back to you to help us with interventions from the floor.
Great. Thank you, Maria. Thank you so much to all four panelists. You've given us quite a lot to think about. I'm coming to you in the room, all of you. There's a lot of food for thought put on the table, and I suspect you have questions, you have reactions, you have comments, you have suggestions. We want to hear from you. All of you, please put up your nameplates, and I see a few. First, the delegate of Iran, followed by the delegate of Iraq. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Actually, migration offers potentials for sustainable development, as has been the case with some countries. However, failing to take note of the structural conditions that produce successful outcome will disorient the course of planning. A one-size-fits-all approach in reaching development will not produce proper results. Drawing comparison between different development contexts does not provide real insight about the trajectory that must be followed. Any development prospects must be predicted on domestic condition. The mass influx that has occurred in Iran over the decades ask for its own solution as far as development is concerned. Actually, in my case, we actually serving 1 million students, Afghanis in Iran, while shortages in schools is obvious to support national and refugees and displaced persons. Still, I'm believing that still considering root cause of the flux is very important to considering the situation of the countries that's actually stalking to this situation of the mass influx. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the distinguished delegate of Iran. I don't think anybody would disagree that different country contexts matter. To the distinguished delegate of Iraq, to be followed by the representative of the United Kingdom. You have the floor, madam.
شكرا جزيلا للمتحدثين جميعا وشكرا للوفود المشاركة. حقيقة مؤتمر مهم جدا يسلط الضوء على مسألة قديمة وحديثة وقد تكون مستمرة للأسف، مسألة الهجرة وطرق تنظيم السبل الملائمة عبر سياسات البلدان سعيا لوصول آمن للمهاجرين وسعيا لاندماجهم بالمجتمعات. يحترم العراق حركة البشر سواء كانت نزوح داخلي أو هجرة باتجاه الخارج أو استقبال للمهاجرين القادمين من الخارج. حقيقة العراق كان بيئة لكل أشكال حركة البشر. بالنظر للظروف المعقدة التي تمر بالمنطقة ولعل أبرزها الحرب التي تشنها القوة القائمة بالاحتلال ضد فلسطين ولبنان، وهنا أشاطر زميلي في جامعة الدول العربية وكلمة جامعة الدول العربية بأن هذه النزاعات لابد أن تحل أولا قبل الحديث عن أي طرق أو حلول مستدامة لمسألة الهجرة. وهذه الحرب للأسف ما زالت قائمة، بل والأدهى من ذلك وأمام صمت وتراجع في موقف المجتمع الدولي هناك تلويح أيضا باستهداف العراق ضمن الدول المستهدفة. وإذا لم تتوقف هذه المسألة الكارثية التي ولدت الكثير من الضحايا من بينهم قتلى ومهاجرين ونساء وأطفال وفئات كثيرة، وأنتم على علم لا أحتاج إلى الكثير من التفصيل في هذا الموضوع. فهي يعني إن كنا نستطيع أن نتعامل مع أو لا نستطيع التعامل مع ضغط الطبيعة أو الظروف الطبيعية المفاجئة، فبالإمكان المجتمع الدولي اليوم أن يتعامل مع الضغط على الأطراف الحرب والنزاع لإيقافها ووضع حد لهذه التجاوزات القائمة بحق الإنسانية. انطلاقا من الأهداف الإنسانية والأخلاقية واحترام الالتزامات الدولية، قامت حكومة العراق بتسهيل دخول المهاجرين وتسهيل تسجيلهم في المدارس. أتحدث عن المهاجرين اللبنانيين تحديدا، وتوفير أماكن سكن ملائمة لهم. تعد قضايا الهجرة والنزوح من الموضوعات الهامة التي توليها الحكومة العراقية اهتماما خاصا، وذلك في إطار سعيها لتحقيق الاستقرار الاجتماعي والاقتصادي وتعزيز حقوق الإنسان وضمان الظروف المعيشية المناسبة لجميع المواطنين والمقيمين على أرضه. يشهد العراق منذ سنوات طويلة موجات من الهجرة والنزوح سواء داخليا أو عبر الحدود نتيجة للصراعات والأزمات الاقتصادية والسياسية. لذلك قامت الحكومة العراقية بوضع استراتيجيات واضحة للتعامل مع هذه الظواهر ودعم المهاجرين بالمجتمعات المتأثرة بالصراع، ولا يتوقف على دعم المهاجرين القادمين بل دعم مجتمعاتهم ماديا ومعنويا، والتي هي بطبيعة الحال تعاني أزمات الحرب أو الكوارث الطبيعية. طبعا نؤمن بأن مسألة الهجرة تحتاج إلى تكثيف المزيد من الجهود، لا يتوقف هذا الموضوع على الدعم المحلي للدول، لكن هو تنسيق مع المنظمات وتنسيق مع الأطراف الدولية الفاعلة واحترام حقوق الإنسان والاتفاقيات بهذا الصدد. هنا طبعا لابد أن أشير لمسألة لم يتم تسليط الضوء الكثير عليها، نتحدث من خلال الكلمات التي استمعنا لحضراتكم والجلسة التي سبقت هذه الجلسة سلطت الأضواء على الإجراءات الحكومية والإجراءات النظامية والتشريعات. هناك جانب مهم جدا لابد من تسليط الضوء عليه، ونحن نعمل على إيجاد حل مستدام، وهو مسألة رفع الوعي المجتمعي، لأن مسألة تقبل المهاجر لا تقف عند الحكومات ولا تقف عند السياسات أو صياغة القوانين، بل هي أيضا تقبل مجتمعي. بالأخير المهاجر عندما يقبل على بلد لابد أن يجد تقبلا. طبعا هذه المسألة خطيرة جدا في ظل التواصل الاجتماعي وتشويه المعلومات الناتجة. اليوم الإعلام صار متاحا بيد الجميع عبر الهواتف النقالة، وبالتالي أن أي تشويه لمسألة أو رفض للمهاجر قد ينتشر أسرع مما تنتشر الإيجابيات الهجرة والتنمية المستدامة ودور المهاجر في الاقتصاد. فعليه لا بد من رفع مستوى الوعي، وشكرا جزيلا لكم لإتاحة الوقت.
Thank you very much, Madam Distinguished Delegate, and especially for your last point about the need to raise awareness in communities. Without a doubt, it is a fundamental for acceptance. So I have quite a few speakers who've asked for the floor. I just want to make sure you know that I have your names written down. Here's the order. I'm going to turn first to the United Kingdom, then the United States, then the Eurasian Economic Commission, followed by China, India, Nepal, ISESCO, okay? And I'm determined to let you get to lunch at 12:30. So if you could please keep your interventions to no more than 2 minutes, that way we can hear from all of you and feed you. So the United Kingdom, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. The UK is pleased to see the focus of the IDM on finding balance in regular migration pathways, and as speakers throughout the morning have recognized, the stark global situation necessitates international commitment to make global migration more safe, orderly, and regular, not just because it's the right thing to do, but also because it brings opportunities. The UK's development work supports this vision by enhancing and demonstrating the benefits of well-managed migration, and we're proud to be supporting programming in North Africa and the Eastern Horn of Africa to improve labour migration governance, enhancing migrant workers' qualifications and skills, and actively engaging social partners for improved development outcomes. To maximise the development benefits of migration, we need to unlock the full potential of remittances, a core component of well-managed migration. That is why this year we've launched the UK-Kenya remittance programme to drive down costs between our countries. We're committed to expanding this discussion and are convening diaspora communities and remittance servants providers to make sure that they're fully involved in the development of solutions that boost financial inclusion and drive down costs associated with sending and receiving remittances. By working in partnership, the UK is looking to harness the potential of regular migration to contribute to economic development. We're clear that where it is well managed, migration can enhance the lives of those who choose to move, the countries they come from and the countries they go to. So thank you for providing this platform in support of these vital connections and partnerships.
And thank you for those very constructive and promising and encouraging comments. Very interesting to see what happens with your partnership with Kenya, and thank you for your words. So next up is the United States, to be followed by the Eurasian Economic Commission. The United States, you have the floor.
Good morning, and thank you for bringing us together for these important conversations. Everyone here today knows the world is facing unprecedented levels of displacement and migration. That's why the United States led the largest expansion in decades of regular pathways to the United States and other countries to help address the challenges of irregular migration and forced displacement. Data show us that when safe and regular migration pathways are available, irregular migration decreases. This means fewer people make dangerous irregular journeys, borders are more secure, and criminal smuggling and trafficking organizations are less able to influence, exploit, and profit from vulnerable migrants. The most recent U.S. innovation on regular pathways and local integration support is the Safe Mobility Initiative, launched in June 2023. Since the launch, hundreds of thousands of individuals have applied to access information on support and integration in host countries, as well as regular migration pathways to other countries. Thousands of applicants have been able to safely remain and rebuild their lives in local host communities, and applicants with international protection needs have safely arrived in the United States and other countries, such as Canada, New Zealand, and Spain. Some other significant results from U.S. efforts to help those in need and reduce irregular migration include migrant crossings in 2024 in Panama's Darien are 1/3 less compared to last year. There is approximately a 48% reduction in irregular migration from North and Central American countries since the U.S. government's root causes strategy began back in July 2021. Since 2020, PRM's Western Hemisphere Regional Migration Program has funded the SITLAM program through IOM in partnership with governments in Central America. SITLAM is a robust circular labor migration program. It fills critical labor shortages and provides migrants with access to legal identity documents and government services, such as finance and health. On average, 9,300 people from Panama and Nicaragua use this program annually to find work in Costa Rica, and the program is set to expand to other countries throughout the region. Of course, these successes have only been possible through close collaboration with everyone involved, including partners working through the framework of the Los Angeles Declaration on Migration and Protection, which includes governments at all levels, international and civil society organizations, private sector partners, and of course, migrants and refugees themselves. We must continue and build on the collaboration that has gotten us this far, but that's not enough. We must also look for ways to innovate and expand on these collaborations to accelerate successes. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the representative of the United States. I'm taking off my moderator hat here just to say I last served as IOM's regional director for Central North America and the Caribbean the last 4 years and witnessed many of the changes that she mentioned. There was a remarkable decrease in irregular migration when more regular migration channels were opened. And that SITLAM program for facilitating labor migration truly is a model that we hope to see expanded around the world. Thank you very much for that. Let me turn now to the representative of the Eurasian Economic Commission, to be followed by the representative of the government of China. You have the floor, madam.
Здравствуйте, уважаемые участники международного диалога. Прежде всего хочу поблагодарить за приглашение на столь высокое мероприятие и поблагодарить всех спикеров, которые очень верно расставили акценты, имеющиеся сегодня в вопросах регулирования миграции. Я представляю Евразийскую экономическую комиссию. Это наднациональный орган Евразийского экономического союза, который включает 5 государств. И одна из целей нашей экономической интеграции – это формирование единого общего рынка труда, где страны, имеющие сегодня дефицит в трудовых ресурсах, могут решать эти вопросы, вопросы трудоустройства, привлечения трудовых ресурсов, и страны с дефицитом рабочих мест, вопросы трудоустройства своих граждан. Сегодня в межгосударственном трудоустройстве внутри нашего союза порядка 1 миллиона трудовых мигрантов. И у нас сегодня есть очень хороший наработанный опыт по вопросу регулирования легальной, упорядоченной трудовой миграции, которым мы готовы поделиться. Сегодня для всех трудящихся на едином рынке труда созданы одинаковые условия работы, предусмотрено одинаковое социальное страхование и решены вопросы пенсионного обеспечения, что очень важно. И мы активно применяем цифровые технологии. Внутри Союза есть цифровая платформа «Работа в ЕАЭС», где есть необходимая вся информация для тех, кто хотел бы трудоустроиться в одной из стран ЕАЭС, где размещена вся официальная информация, которая дается государственными уполномоченными органами. Также хочу сказать, сегодня вот многие спикеры тоже поднимали этот вопрос подготовки кадров на единый рынок труда. Здесь у нас тоже есть определенный опыт. Мы составляем единый перечень востребованных профессий, которые также предоставляют государственные органы, и формируем к ним квалификационные требования. То есть это является и ориентиром для системы подготовки кадров. Также у нас решен вопрос автоматического признания документов об образовании, и мы работаем сегодня над немаловажным вопросом, вопрос признания квалификации. Вот то, о чем говорил сегодня господин Сантос, что это очень важно, чтобы квалификация на глобальном рынке труда признавалась. И еще один момент, это тоже об этом сегодня говорилось, вопрос подготовки уже в странах выезда навыкам и квалификациям граждан, которые хотят трудоустройства. Но здесь есть вопрос, над которым нам надо подумать, есть ли необходимость создания универсальных квалификационных требований, ведь у каждой страны они свои. Как нам сделать так, чтобы страны исхода могли подготовить своих граждан для работы в той или иной стране? Каким квалификационным требованиям они должны соответствовать? И кто должен на глобальном уровне выработать эти требования? Хочу в заключение отметить, что мы поддерживаем все усилия международной организации по миграции, всю ту работу, которая ими производится, и заинтересованы в эффективном партнерстве. Спасибо большое.
Thank you very much for that very substantive contribution. I think it's an excellent example of what regional economic integration bodies can do and specifically tackle what are otherwise very profound barriers, like the recognition of skills and qualifications or the access to Social Security. I think this is an example very well worth watching. Thank you, Madam. And I'd now like to turn to the representative of the Government of China. Sir, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. China supports the development of regular migration pathways to create great opportunities for sustainable development and green transitions. 3 points. First, we propose to balance the development needs of countries of origin, transit, and destination so as to implement the principle of inclusive and equitable development. Through the Global Development and South-South Cooperation Fund, China has contributed to more than 130 livelihood projects in 60 countries in the areas such as poverty alleviation, food security, and climate change, benefiting more than 30 million people. Second, we embrace a whole-of-government and whole-of-society approach to build inclusive and constructive policies and service systems for migrant integration. The National Immigration Administration of China has adopted favorable policies to support foreign professionals, their spouses, and elder children in employment, Nearly 400 migration service centers are being built nationwide, with many already operational to provide foreign nationals with localized services, including policy consultation, residency and travel assistance, legal aid, and cultural integration support. Additionally, a government agency website featuring the 6 UN official languages has been launched, along with a 24/7 service hotline in both Chinese and English languages, offering migrant guidance for daily life and online services. And finally, we call for broader cooperation in global migration governance. China has constantly demonstrated a responsible attitude and concrete actions in participating in global and regional dialogues on migration governance. Just in this September, we held the Sub-Forum on Migration Management Cooperation under the framework of the Global Public Security Cooperation Forum in Suzhou City of Jiangsu Province, with the participation of 67 countries and 7 international organizations, including the IOM. So we are looking forward to further the international cooperation with the rest of the world to enhance the global governance in migration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, distinguished Representative of China. 3 very concrete and excellent points. Let me now turn to the representative of India. You have the floor, the delegate of India, to be followed by the representative of Nepal.
Thanks a lot. Good afternoon. Thanks to all the panelists for highlighting the challenges in practical implementation of migration policies. Chair had asked for good practices in various countries regarding this practical implementation. I would like to highlight India's efforts in leveraging digital technology to facilitate regular migration. We have introduced 2 platforms. One is eShram, E-S-H-R-A-M, it means labor. This is for the internal migration, and over 300 million skilled laborers have already registered on this particular platform. It facilitates smooth migration within the country. The second is e-migrate. E-migrate is basically for the skilled people going abroad. And what has been discussed mostly by all the panelists regarding matching of the skills by the receivers and the donors, that is done on e-migrate. We have over 18,000 institutions and companies registered on this. I would request all in the House to please have a look in these platforms. Thanks a lot.
I thank you very much, distinguished representative of India, for the very concrete contribution, and I share your encouragement to others to look at those platforms that the delegate of India just mentioned. Let me now turn to the distinguished representative of Nepal. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam. Thank you so much, Madam Master of Ceremony, Madam Moderator, respected speakers, respected delegates, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Rajendra Raut. I'm representing the Global Diaspora Nepali organization called Non-Resident Nepali Association. I'll be taking part also the panelists for the next, after 3:30, but thank you for giving me a few minutes to share some of my comments and inputs on this session. As you know, role of global diaspora community is really important for making regular migration pathways sustainable, safe, and dignified. If we look at the current status of Nepal, more than 6 million Nepali people are living around the world for different purposes. Every year, more than 700,000 people are going abroad for migrant worker purpose, and the issue of students are another that we have the different figure. But if we look at the contribution on the economy, more than 22% of the GDP is coming from the remittances, from different sources. Definitely major destination countries are Middle East, Malaysia, and now the Europe and many other countries. So migrant workers are not only contributing for the economic development, for the sustainable development, but also migrant workers are coming back home with technical knowledge, skills that can also contribute for the local economy, for making them self-reliant. This creates local employment opportunities. So role of diaspora community, international diaspora community like Nepali diaspora is crucial for bolstering sustainable development. Just an example, IOM, International Organization for Migration Nepal Office, and NRNA, Non-Resident Nepali Association, has also carried out our first global diaspora mapping assessment in Nepal. It states that IOM and NRNA collaborate to produce Nepal's first ever diaspora mapping report. This comprehensive study report provides key insight into the socioeconomic profiles, professional skills, and expertise of the Nepali diaspora across 16 countries. The findings emphasize their capacity, interest, and motivation to contribute to Nepal's development through knowledge, transfer skills, sharing business ventures, and investment initiative. So the role of international, especially diaspora community, is really important for making self-sustainable development. So I think this has to be discussed, and I think this needs to be very important. Thank you so much. Thank you for giving me opportunity.
Thank you very much, sir. It's great to hear from the Nepali Diaspora Association, and you made the point very strongly about the importance of diaspora engagement and the contributions that are made. And our last speaker from the floor, Madam Representative of ISESCO, you have the final word from the floor.
Thank you very much, Excellency. Actually, my question to the panelists, while we are talking about creating opportunities through the pathways, regular pathways, I think the creation of the opportunities is on the side of the receiving country. And the panelists spoke about engaging the local governments, and I know that Spain have a very successful practice in the circular migration, especially in the circular migration. How to engage the local governments remains as a question. I think putting the successful practices to be known to all countries, especially the receiving countries, can be one of the solutions, or can give an opportunity to widen the opportunities for the pathways. But at the same time, while we are speaking about all these positive practices, there is a growing anti-migration trends in some countries, and some countries are closing more their borders, and they are putting new legislations, national legislations against receiving more migrants, or even having the right to forcibly return migrants to their countries of origin, or looking for a third country to receive them. So I think, and this is a question to the panelists, I don't want to put it as a comment, how are we going to show the positive side of receiving migrants? How are we going to convince such countries that migration is a positive phenomena? It adds to the hosting communities. How are we going to do that? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam. And maybe, Maria, if I could suggest that, given the interest of time, that you open the floor to each panelist for no more than 1 minute each, because I have one announcement before releasing you for lunch. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michelle. So I'm going to give you this very, very difficult task, which is reflecting and reacting in the very rich interventions that you heard about, but also give us your last thoughts on what are the action or decisions, or one, that this group should consider to prioritize to transform regular migration pathways into true development pathways. Minister, let me start with you. If you allow me, Minister Santos, to start with you.
Merci, Madame. Pour nous, ce qui est important, c'est d'organiser un système de bonne gouvernance pour les questions de migration. Et ça, on doit le faire ensemble, parce que cette question de la migration sûre, ordonnée et régulière, c'est un défi stratégique de nous tous au niveau mondial. Je parlais de l'alliance qu'on a lancée à Cap-Vert. Il y a beaucoup des autres initiatives, mais c'est nécessaire vraiment d'ensemble la définition d'un système de gouvernance pour les migrations où tout le monde participe. On doit donner aussi la voix à les immigrants, à tous, à toutes les personnes, des organisations non gouvernementales, au niveau des gouvernements, des organisations internationales aussi. Pour l'OIM joue un rôle central à ce niveau, c'est nécessaire de construire des solutions objectifs pour arriver à pour améliorer l'intégration des migrants au niveau des pays d'origine et aussi des pays d'accueil. Bon, le temps est petit. Merci beaucoup. Merci.
Thank you very much, Minister. Ms. Vella, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Definitely, I mean, I have to echo what the colleague, Honorable Minister, has said. Definitely a good governance system, a collective framework, definitely the role of IOM as well as other regional frameworks. But I will add to that we also need collective patience. Because I think we need to go from words into concrete action, implementable actions, and this takes time. I think you all know that, we all know that, and we need to do it step by step and capitalizing actually on all the positive and good work that has been done and continues to be done. So I think this is, in my view, how we should go forward. And there isn't a lot of time, but we do need time to devise the right policy actions and the right policy responses. And I think this is what should be our philosophy going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Said.
Yeah, thank you very much. First, on addressing one of the questions that was issued about how do we combat that negative narrative that we are having and the hate speech, and I think it is very, very important to do that from the community up, from the bottom up at local level. The reality is that many of our neighbors are migrants, and we need to shift the narrative, and we need to do that together. And in order to shift the narrative, we need to ensure that there is also an investment in the shift of the narrative, and that the good cases and the good examples, because many of our economies are thriving because of migrant employment. That's the reality. And many of our shops are closing because there is no one to tend them. And so that change of narrative needs to be there. The second thing is we need increasing investment. There is very, very little funding reaching the local level for green jobs and financing. Only around 4% of the climate adaptation finance reach local governments, and green jobs are going to be a very important part. Green jobs and care jobs are a very important part of the solution in jobs of the future. So we will need to guarantee access to local and regional governments. And finally, for the sake of time, again, we need to invest more on analysis and research on the role of cities and local governments, and our mayors mechanism will soon publish a white paper on the role of local governments. Please keep track of that and follow those conversations, and don't see them only as little pilot projects, but as truly transformative initiatives to rethink the system, as the director was proposing to us this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Said. Mr. Oropesa, last word from you. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Madam Chair. Bueno, seré muy breve por cuestiones de tiempo, pero sí compartir un par de ideas para responder a las preguntas. Lo primero sería la recomendación siempre de generar políticas públicas basadas en evidencia más que en ideología, ¿no? Esto nos permitirá ser un poquito más objetivos en la generación de normativas y de programas que gestionen la migración de una manera más eficaz y más cercano a la realidad. En segundo lugar, contar con mecanismos de integración claros y competentes que complementen estas oportunidades que va generando la demografía y también los fenómenos económicos, como mencionaron los panelistas hoy en la mañana. Tercer punto, los programas circulares y o temporales que se llevan a cabo en distintas regiones del mundo son un claro ejemplo de que programas bien pensados han demostrado su eficacia para poder contribuir al desarrollo de las comunidades locales, tanto en países de destino como en comunidades de origen. Y cuarto y último, y es una coincidencia con lo que han planteado aquí, en especial la señora Saiz, es el empoderamiento de las comunidades locales, ¿no? Porque vamos entonces aquí del discurso global a lo regional, a lo nacional y digamos que hasta lo local es en donde en realidad se ve todas estas autoridades y todos estos servicios, el supermercado, la utilización del transporte público, las escuelas, en donde realmente tenemos un contacto cara a cara con los migrantes y pensar entonces cómo la migración en realidad ofrece más posibilidades que desafíos. ¿Sería cuánto?
Thank you very much. May I try to summarize, or would you like?
Please do.
That is an impossible task, I think, but I will try. So, first of all, let me start from where the Honourable Minister finished, that good migration governance systems are an objective for everyone. Policy and the operationalization of policies and tools are very important, and as Ms. Vella highlighted, balancing the urgency with collective patience and capitalizing on what is already there. In this sense, showcasing solutions that are already there and working, as we heard already from the panel and from many of the colleagues in the room, are very important to build on. We heard about the importance of information, transparency, predictability for people in the move, how this saves lives but also allows for receiving countries to better manage migration flows. But also the importance of solutions that contribute to the well-being and the development of origin, host communities, and the people themselves. And this, the combination of the well-being, but also with the need to protect these individuals that are in the move. Solutions like talent and skills partnerships are very important. They work, and the importance of scaling this up. We heard about the importance of remittances. Let me also add to that, very good examples from the panel and others. We need to all continue to working to reducing the cost of remittances, an area where the World Bank will continue also to support countries to reduce the cost with all our partners and also monitor, but also the importance of investment and productive use of remittances. The importance of discussion at domestic level with government, private sector, all stakeholders, civil society, local, regional governments, but also of the global dialogue and combinations of all of this at global, regional, and local level. Last but not least, the importance of using evidence and data at all levels to combating misinformation. The program today has an excellent discussion also on this issue, but also to showcasing the investment case of when well-managed migration contributes to the development paths of countries and the people themselves. So I hope I managed to capture the key points, and back to you, Michelle.
Hi, that was a tour de force, Maria. Thank you. I invite the audience to join me in a round of applause for our speakers and for our moderator. Bravo. Felicidades. Excelente. Thank you so much. And before I release you, just a few quick announcements for you. We are going to feed you. When you leave the room, there's sandwiches and other food for all of you. There's also food for thought. There's very important food for thought. And so there are a series of interactive exhibitions outside this room. So while you're taking your sandwiches around and feeding your body, please feed your minds also. This is meant to be, there are three key things I'd like to highlight. One is a marketplace, and that it allows you to see and engage with some of the concrete programs and projects IOM is implementing in this ambit and arena. And we want to have you get to know those and to ask questions and see whether any of them might be replicable in your spaces, including the winner of our Innovations Award that you'll hear tonight. Second, there's an I Am a Migrant exhibition, an art exhibition, very much to show the resilience and success stories of migrants, building on what was just said right now, through powerful visual storytelling and art. Please take a look at this, because we do need to tell the positive stories as much as we need to focus on the challenges. And finally, there's a very moving installation of roses. It's an art and data installation representing 5,500 migrants who went missing over the course of this year. And I want to point out that it's produced with recyclable materials. It is meant to be in line with the green economy that we're talking about here. And it's important that we honor those who have been lost in trying to seek safe and productive lives. So with that, I invite you to nourish your bodies and your minds and to please be back here no later than 2 p.m. to continue with our discussion. Thank you.